All right. Thanks for joining us today on the show. We had a great time. Happy
Yeah, it
birthday
was a
again
great
to
show.
Captain
Thanks, everyone.
Nick.
Yeah,
And we'll see you next week on the
yeah. All
next
the best to
episode.
everybody.
It was great. Great. We had a great time today.
Yeah, you missed a really good show.
We decided we'd do it a little bit early. Sorry. Forgot to hit the broadcast button. Our bad. Right. So we are about ready to start this show. It's going to be a really, really good show. Okay.
Well, it's only going to be really good because Dr. Steph isn't here. It would be really, really good
Really
if Dr.
good.
Steph was here.
Exactly.
It'd be awesome if Dr. Steph was here.
Is she still golfing at Top Golf or something?
I know. I was looking at a picture of her backswing, and she's got a really good kind of position. She looks like a proper professional.
Well, she's an
anything
athlete.
she can't do.
She definitely is an athlete. Okay. Let's check let me make sure I got everything recording over here. Let me do
That worked.
And blah, 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 blah. Here we go. That is recording.
Wow.
Excuse me.
I'd get that scene to if I were you, Jeff.
Well, Chris got tacos for lunch, and, well, what can I say? I told him to hold off on the beans.
Is he recovered from his all-nighter?
Yeah, he slept for 12 hours, and
poor guy.
He's back with the living.
Well done. No, it's a good job you did there.
Yeah. I'll talk about it here in just a few minutes on the show, but yeah, I didn't intend to make a day of it, but that's what happened.
Oh, well,
So,
family's first.
Dad was needed.
Exactly.
So it's good to be a dad. Okay. Let's see. It's good.
I
to
wouldn't
be
know.
and needed. So let's start with 288. Airline Pilot Guy, episode 288.
Flight 209, are you clear for takeoff? Roger.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, the view from our side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1A in the APG headquarters building in Roswell, Georgia, a northern Atlanta suburb. In today's episode, justice served to unruly passenger and a baggage handler, several Indian pilots and crew members likely to be grounded, pilot falls from helicopter, more news, your feedback, and the latest Plain Tales installment, The Hunger Winter. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. Flight 288 is ready for pushback. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, an aviation podcast. I am a captain for a major U.S. legacy airline, and joining me, also a captain for a major airline in Europe, flying the wide bodies, a professional photographer, former RAAF pilot, and just a all-around great person and birthday boy, Captain Nick.
Hi, Jeff. I heard you slip that in. Yeah, another year older. And delighted to be back on the show as usual. Looking forward to a good one. Just flown my sorry backside on my birthday from London to New York, and I was going to go out with the whole crew, buy them all drinks. We're going to have a big party. There's a rooftop bar just outside the hotel, and I gave that all up just so I could come on the show today.
The royal sacrifice. We all
Absolutely.
appreciate it so
There
much.
you go. But thanks for having me as usual.
Oh, it's all our pleasure. And also joining us, a Harley-Davidson driver, a former regional pilot, and now major airline pilot, and we call him Captain Dana Colton because, heck, he is going to be a captain really, really soon. Hey, Dana.
Hello and happy birthday there, Captain Nick. Great to see you joining us and not celebrating too heartily, but I know you will at some point during the show have a toast to you, I'm sure. But great to be back. It seems like it's been forever since I've been on. It's been a crazy August, and up until September here, it's been crazy. So looking forward to a great show. Going to be a short show for me tonight. Have plans later on I couldn't get out of. So here we'll have some fun for the short time I'm here. But great to be back, and great to see both of you again, as always.
So what do you mean we're going to toast him at some point in the show? Are you kidding me? Let's do it now.
Well, I don't have anything here to drink.
Yes, you got a drink. Here, have some of mine, Dana.
Wait, let me take the pens out first.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nick. Birthday to you. Oh, yeah. Come on now. Let's pick it up. Birthday to you.
We're not going to do this every year, are we?
Happy birthday, dear.
There you go. What do you think about that, huh?
I think that's marvelous. Thank you very much indeed. I feel
And many more.
that's made up for going out with 12 beautiful girls.
Wow.
And, I took with them.
You know what?
I don't know about that.
You know, life is a lot about choices, Nick, and it's pretty much all about choices, and I think you made the wrong choice.
I think so, too.
Yeah, I'm beginning to regret it now, but there you go.
Do you want to just go ahead and make it a really short show, and then you can join up with the rest of your gang?
I think they've probably all gone to bed now. They know there's no free beer.
That's the way you get them to go out with you. Okay.
Hang on. I mean, I'm a 63-year-old fat airline pilot. Yes.
No. I'm the fat one.
Wait, hold on. Time out. I think
is this a contest?
Come on. See?
You know what? Hey, Fred. You know Fred, right? Fred Sampson out there in Northern California. He posted something on Slack that I find extremely offensive. Oh. It was an article that talked about beer, especially hops in beer, and IPAs, especially about man boobs. Getting man boobs and beer bellies and everything else. I'm thinking, bring on the man boobs. I'm all for it.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll drink IPA till I need a double D.
Hey, I'm already there. I've got the man's ear on. See,
I'm going to go for the man's ear.
There we go.
Like in that episode of Seinfeld. Anyway, speaking of birthdays, today is your actual birthday, the 9th day of the 9th month. And we had somebody send in something special kind of to commemorate your birthday. Nick, you want to hear it?
Oh, yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, here we go.
The old curmudgeon. I remember his feedback well. Always eloquent, always topical, and very often funny, too. I remember hearing his voice for the first time. So well-spoken, so traditionally British. I would look forward to his feedback and hope he would write in weekly. After a while, I learned that the old curmudgeon was Captain Nick Anderson, former RAF fast-jet pilot and current captain on a major UK-based international airline. I imagined him as a perfect British gentleman. There's this old story about a proper British gentleman who's invited to a formal party in the USA to celebrate the 18th birthday of the daughter of an American business associate. While there, he meets this stunning young lady, making the most of a strapless evening gown, and who's wearing this magnificent necklace. Gentleman that he is, he asks her to dance. As they're dancing, the necklace comes loose and falls down her dress. The young woman says to him, "My necklace has fallen down my dress. Before it falls out and gets stepped on here on this crowded dance floor, you need to reach down the back of my dress and get it." This proper British gentleman is completely embarrassed, but the chivalrous man that he is, he can't refuse this young woman's request. But reaching down the back of her dress is not what a British gentleman should do on a public dance floor. Reluctantly, He does as requested. He reaches in, but tells his dance partner that he can't find the necklace. The young lady says, "It's right there, just a bit further down. Move your hand down further." Still dancing, he reaches down further, and the woman says, "Almost there, just a bit more." This British gentleman turns bright red with embarrassment, but does as requested. Feeling totally awkward, mortified by this public display, he says to her, "I feel a perfect ass." "Never mind that," the young woman says. "Just get the necklace." That's the kind of man I thought Nick would be. Well, that was until I met him anyway. You see, Nick's a gentleman of conviction and would never do anything to disappoint a stunning young lady. He would have dived in head first to retrieve her necklace if he had to. But that's the kind of man he is, always at your service. You see, when I first learned about Captain Nick, I knew him as the RAF fast jet pilot who, at the sound of the klaxon, would climb into his F-4 Phantom II and chase down those Russian bear bums who were trying to infiltrate NATO airspace. I thought of him as a heroic kind of guy I wanted to meet. Then I got to meet him, got to know him, got to see him dance with beautiful Barbara Parrish while he was wearing only his newly acquired underwear. And don't try to deny it, Nick. I have the pictures to prove it. Well, that's when I realized that I'd go chasing bear bums of any nationality with Nick any time. I'm happy to call him my friend. So happy birthday, my friend Captain Nick, and many, many more. For the Airline Pilot Guy, here in Portland, Maine, this is your main man, Micah.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
Very nice. Micah.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Beautiful. I'm trying to work out
Wow.
how come that necklace didn't fall down the front of her dress.
I don't know.
No.
And did Micah say that he'd go chasing bear bums with you anywhere?
Yes, he
I
would
think,
apparently.
I
So
think that's what he just said.
yeah, well, actually, with that in mind, Micah also sent me a beautiful birthday card. Now, for those on the video, I'm just going to show it. It's a fabulous painting, and it shows an Imperial Airways short S8 Calcutta flying boat, the city of Khartoum, resting on the Sea of Galilee. I don't know if you remember, Jeff, but at Wings Over Pittsburgh, Micah had his friend with him, whose name is right here, and I'm just Eric. That's it. Anyway, Eric has now started a line of cards, and this is the very first. So he's licensed some of his artwork to this company that makes cards, and this is their first aircraft product.
Wow.
So he was kind enough to send me this as a birthday card, which I thought was very touching because he knows I have a thing about flying boats, and this is fabulous. So that was a great birthday gift, apart from your wonderful feedback. Thank you, Micah. That's great. Really appreciate that, and very apt also, because of the subject of that feedback. I'm wearing a T-shirt which Adam Spink sent, and it's a. I'll stand up a little bit so you can see it. All right, it's a.
Very nice.
It's an
Nice.
RAF fighter pilot's helmet with a red bear, bear bomber, reflected in the visor, and underneath it says in sort of anglicized Russian, it says Bear Hunter, which I think is absolutely lovely. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Adam.
Gary loves beer. Said it here. It says, how appropriate for the discussion. Dash ASSJ. Perfect for the discussion because that was what was on the card's end number.
Oh, really?
Tail number.
So it is,
GASSJ? Ask J?
Well, no, not
Yeah.
quite right. AASJ.
Double ASJ. Oh, okay. We got the
Oh, okay.
one
So
too
he
many
got it wrong.
S's and
Okay.
not
Close
enough
to
A's.
coconut. So.
Nice try. Gary loves beer.
And of course, I've received lots of very nice comments on Facebook and Twitter. So thank you, everyone who made comment. And I don't know how the secret of my birthday got out, but much appreciated.
I kept mine really secret. It
Yeah,
worked
you
out
did.
great.
Yes, you
when
did.
was it?
Last month.
Oh,
And we
okay.
did a show. We actually did a show on the day. So
Oh, well, you don't need to be so modest next time. Well, we'll figure it out. next time.
no,
Cover
it's okay. Oh, speaking of drinks,
Mhm. Were we speaking of drinks?
Yes. Well, one has just been delivered. Thank you
Very
very much.
nice.
Oh, well done, sir. Oh,
Mm.
Mike is in the chat room.
Yes.
And so he is reminding me that the card is from Bella Terra Publishing. So
Bellaterra Maps.
BellaTerraMaps.com.
Very nice.
And it is actually a beautiful painting. I'd love to see the original, but it's a gorgeous card anyway. Very, it's as you would imagine from the Sea of Galilee. It's full of oranges of the sand and the beautiful water. It really is very thought-provoking. Lovely. Thank you, Micah.
Well, he's
Great
a classy
job, Micah.
dude. Classy guy.
I can't wait to meet him one of these days. Once I get a
you'll love him. He's great.
you
Portland
will.
meeting overnight, which has been elusive, and I'm very senior now, and it's been very elusive. So I've been
it's
trying
not
to get
easy
them. No, they're not.
Yeah. Hey, have you guys heard that there's a big storm going on here in the U.S. or about to
What, you mean
make
in
landfall
the White House?
Yes.
in
Or
South
is it
Florida?
something else? Oh, down there. Yes.
Yeah,
of course.
White
Hurricane
House.
Irma. Hurricane Irma. I'm sure it's something to do with the Republican Party. All these natural disasters, but so that's going on, about to make landfall, and we were going to record this episode on Thursday. In fact, all of us were available. And then I got home from my trip, and my wife was talking to my son on the phone, and I could tell that, it sounded like pretty serious conversation going on. I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "Well, Chris is driving home from Orlando to get away because the projected track of the hurricane was going to head up toward Orlando, and he would rather not be there." And I thought, that's pretty smart. And he had already headed over toward the Florida Turnpike and heading up toward he was on I-75, and it was basically just crawling. It wasn't moving. And I looked on the Google Maps to see the traffic flow, and it was bad. It was very, very red. And so I started looking at different options for him. And I said, "How much gas do you have?" And he said, "About a half a tank." And I said, "Okay, we're going to have to find some place for you to get gas, and we have to figure out how we're going to get you to Atlanta. But we're going to avoid I-75 and I-95 in doing that." So I guided him for the next, I don't know, I was probably on the phone with him for about the next 7 hours, guiding him through all these back roads and highways and state roads and all that kind of stuff, and helping him find gas stations that were open. The ones that he said, "Oh, here's a gas station, there's no line." And then he goes, "Oh, because it's not open." All the pumps are covered with bags. And so he finally found a place to refuel. I got him to stop a couple of times just to make sure, just to kind of give him that peace of mind that he was going to have gasoline for the entire journey. So the drive from Orlando that normally takes him 7 hours took 12. But he finally made it home, and everybody's happy, and he slept for 12 hours straight. After he had a beer and something to eat for dinner, he crashed and slept for 12 hours. And so all is good here in the Nielsen household. But a lot of people heading up from Florida, especially up to the Atlanta area, staying with friends and family. And I think, Dana, you know something about that?
Yeah, actually, I do. I have my buddy Dave. His parents live in the Palm Beach area, and we finally were able to talk them in. His father was being very stubborn, is the word, and was not wanting to get on the road and come up here. So they finally decided to hit the road. Took them until 5 o'clock this morning. They left yesterday at just about noontime to get into the Atlanta area. That's not as bad as my other friend, Melissa. And so they're going to be spending the next several days here in my house. But fortunately, we were able to get him. He's probably late 70s, early 80s, and not the best of health. So, if they had lost power and or had limited emergency services, et cetera, it would not have been a good scenario for him. So we're glad, we can provide. Had, other family and friends that tried to talk them into coming up here. We have plenty of room, but they opted to stay. And my friend Melissa, she left about 1 o'clock the day before, and it took her 2 days to get out of the state of Florida.
Wow.
So, and she's happily up at her boyfriend's family's house in Alabama, which is actually kind of where the hurricane's going to
Yeah.
be going. So
Keep shifting,
I texted her earlier and I said, "Guess what? The hurricane followed you." So
Yeah.
it was
Lord.
crazy just getting home from the parking lot when I got home Thursday afternoon. It's amazing how many Florida plates I saw and ended up just hopping off the highways and went all back roads home, just like your son.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I know the back way. I mean, there's about 20 different ways to get home, but there's a lot of people that have come up in, Florida. One of the biggest things, not everybody knows the geography, but Florida, there's only one way in and out really, and that's going north. There is no east-west until you get to North Florida, until you get to I-10. So the backups are crazy. They ultimately ended up opening up all northbound highways to northbound traffic on the southbound lanes, so to help expedite people getting out of the state.
Yeah, I think in Georgia they opened up I-16. They call it contraflow, where everything is going one direction away from the Atlantic. Yeah, so the storm track projection keeps changing. Richard says he's staying in Orlando, and I'm sure that Orlando's going to be fine. We'll probably get some high winds and a lot of rain, but it's really the aftermath of these storms that are the most trying in most cases, unless you're in the direct line of for the brunt of the storm, because it's just the aftermath of all these big catastrophes is just. It's painful to live through, especially if you don't have any power. And so I think his mom, my wife, talked him into leaving. He's got a little cat, and he kind of was feeling responsible for making sure that the cat was going to be okay too. So, and he took some of his possessions and loaded them up in the Jeep and headed home. So I think he's planning on staying home for at least a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks before he heads back.
Well, that
down.
was very sensible and a great thing you did to stick with him for so long, Jeff. It must have been real tough for him. I know he didn't have much sleep before his drive.
Yeah.
And the last thing you could have ever wanted was him to fall asleep when he was trying to make that journey.
I really was worried that he was going to fall asleep, so I was just kind of in his ear the whole time, asking him questions about what he sees and kind of following him along on Google Maps, which is kind of fun, actually. I could see, okay, this road, is this the next road you're coming by? Yep, just past that one, and so that kept him alert all the way home. So anyway, and then we thought we're going to go ahead and record on Sunday morning. Again, it looked like that was going to be a good time for all of us, including Steph, to join us on the show for this week, and I ended up picking up some extra flying, a green slip. I think you've heard me talk about green slips. That's basically getting double the amount of pay that we normally get for flying a trip, and I got a 3-day trip leaving tomorrow morning, which ended up screwing up the scheduled recording tomorrow morning. So
is that a technical term, Jeff?
What, screwing up?
Yeah, screwing up the schedule.
Yes, screwing up the schedule.
I just wondered.
Yes, very technical term. So yeah, it was hard for me to turn down, and I thought, I need to help out the company and get in there, do some flying. And,
you're such a nice chap to your company.
I just do what I can. So it's going to be a busy week, Sunday through Tuesday, and then I go out on my regular trip on Wednesday through Friday. So it's going to be 6 days in a row, but. Anyway, so I'm glad that we were able to at least to get the three of us together. Steph, we miss you. Sorry you couldn't make it. But anyway, let's see. What else were we going to talk about as far as Hurricane Irma? Anything else?
All I was going to mention was I was taking a look at some posts at the light aircraft trying to get out of the various airports out of Florida. And there was some amazing Flight 24 tracks. I think one I saw just up the Panhandle, 43 light aircraft, all at 8,000 feet, all in a great long daisy chain heading up towards safety. And then another video that someone had taken over an airfield, and there, I mean, I've seen JFK looking busy. Good Lord, there were aircraft queued right around. There must have been 50 or 70 aircraft in a queue. The guy just tracked all these airplanes, just queuing, trying to get off for about a minute. And I was going, well, I just lost count how many airplanes there are queued to take off there. That must have been a nightmare.
Yeah, Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, I was going to say, my buddy, really nice guy. He's also with Acme, and he owns a partnership share in a 310. And he had put out on Facebook. Facebook's a great social media and way to share. And he put out that he had 2 extra seats. He was going down in his 310 on a rescue mission to help evacuate people. And
Great guy.
yeah, he was just helping pay for gas, and that was it. And he went down there, and he's one of those guys that you saw on the queue, I'm sure, and really good. And also Acme sent down a 747 to Orlando. I don't know if anybody caught that, but out of Detroit they sent 74 down to Orlando, and they posted that they were going to cap the fare at a very reasonable price and not charge any more. So yeah, pretty neat.
We got some critical flight operations updates at Acme regarding extra sections that they were putting on both to Orlando and Tampa to try to help employees, especially employees, get out of the area and evacuate. And they also, I'm sure many of you saw the posts regarding the 737 out of JFK that flew there to Puerto Rico, and right before Irma hit Puerto Rico, they landed, dumped some people off, picked up a full load of passengers, and flew back to New York right kind of before the big eye of the hurricane hit. And there's a nice picture on one of the social media sites of the 737 track, and it's kind of between one of the major part of the storm and the outer bands. So that was pretty cool. So a lot of companies are doing this kind of thing. A lot of heroism out there. People helping everybody, and this is what we're all about, really. When times get bad, that's when the true, what's inside of you comes out, and that's very cool to see.
Mariana asked a question: where did all the Florida planes go? More than likely, if for the airlines, they probably flew them out of harm's way into their hubs or to remote stations that had extra space for, once you have all these aircraft on the ground, airports run out of parking space real quick. So the airline can send it either to the hub and remote park them and that helps with the startup, when the airline wants to start back up after the operation. But they certainly fly all the aircraft out of harm's way. And a lot of those general aviation aircraft coming out of Florida doing the same thing, pretty much just flying the aircraft out of harm's way so that they're not positioned where they're not going to be affected by the hurricane. You mentioned something earlier about, all the effects like in Orlando, as far as getting hit by the hurricane, which will be tropical force at that point, or Cat 1. The bigger problem, I think, is going to be as this thing moves inland, a lot of the houses are not built quite as strong to be able to deal with the winds. And also, as you move further north and inland, the trees here, with all the leaves still on them, they're not as flexible as palm trees tend to be down south. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of power outages up through the Georgia, Alabama, Carolina area too, because of the trees being more susceptible. And we've had a lot of rain, so the soil is quite wet too. So I think we're going to see a pretty big impact, kind of like what we saw in Houston as well.
Well, in the next few days, I'm going to get to practice some crosswind landings. Because the airplane I fly in and out of Atlanta is kind of a common thing. And we're in Atlanta supposed to get the brunt of the tropical storm. At that point, it's going to be a tropical storm, no longer a hurricane, but tropical force winds on Monday, I believe, and maybe Monday night and into early Tuesday morning. So I'll certainly let you know how that all works out. It's going to be an exciting 3 days, I think. But anyway, and the Lane...
You're going to earn your pay. You're going to earn your money.
I'm actually going to earn my money for a change,
yes.
Right? Lane Street says that those 172s were out of Embry-Riddle, and they were heading up. And Comanche Sue, hello, Comanche Sue. She said that she evacuated their Comanche. Trying to scroll back here on the in the chat room. They flew it from South Florida, and she said it was very busy in Florida airspace yesterday.
I bet it was. I've landed in a Typhoon, Jeff, in Shanghai, and all the way across, they were giving over 47 knots across the runway. And magically, when I got onto the tower frequency, they called the wind just inside my crosswind limits.
Isn't that this? It's coincidental how that all
Yeah,
works
I know.
out.
It's really weird. And I guess they thought they were doing me a favor, but actually, when we tried to put the airplane down, we went around the first approach. When we tried to put the airplane down the second time, it was probably the most concerned I've ever been. And at the end of it, I wished to hell they'd just told the truth and told me what the actual wind was, because I could have made a safe decision. But as it was in limits, so I assumed it would be okay-ish. But my father was waiting for me in Shanghai. He'd come up from Australia, and I was going to take him on to London when I did my return flight. And I got into the hotel. He was sitting there waiting for me. He took one look at me and he said, "You're all right."
You look like a ghost.
Yeah, I said, "No." He said, as you could imagine from my father, he says, I've got a bottle of whiskey in my room." And I said, that sounds perfect. And we went up and I told him the story, and we drank that bottle of whiskey. And then I felt a lot better.
Much, much better.
Much, much better.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Comanche Sue says she's just up the road from me. Comanche, come on down to Roswell, and you can join me here behind the microphone.
Oh, yeah. We're going to be here for 3 hours. You got plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
Anyway, so, yes, sir?
I was going to say, pardon me, just about lost my voice there. I had the distinct opportunity going to Nassau into a hurricane, Category 1.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But oh, my God, I'm losing my voice all of a sudden. Hold on one second.
Thank you.
Oh, you're funny, Jeff.
Sorry.
So yeah, the winds were, but the winds were straight down the runway, so they opted to send us, and it was I've never seen a ground speed on a Mad Dog so low. We were doing about 104, 103 miles an hour over the ground, or knots over the ground, and when we touched down, we had about a 45 to 50 knot headwind. So it was crazy. It was absolutely.
I think it was last year. I was flying into Savannah, and I think it was one of the most hair-raising, scary approaches I've ever done in my life, and it was a retreating tropical storm actually going through Savannah. It wasn't even a hurricane, and it was a handful. So I guess I better make sure I get a good night's sleep the next few nights. Make sure that I have all my wits about me for flying through this kind of weather. But I'll let you know, as I said. Yeah,
if you want some extra wits, I'll send some down, Jeff.
Please, I could always use extra wits.
Yeah, of course.
No problem. If I was nice, I'd come out and fly with you. That way you could have a really crappy FO with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's all I need.
Hang on, guys. We don't want to get rid of half the show in one flight. That would be no good at all. That would
There's got to be a rule.
Steph and me.
Anyway, well, enough talk about the hurricane. I'm sure we're going to touch on the last Hurricane Harvey that did all the flooding, and maybe a little bit about this one as well in the feedback section of the show. So I think we can move on and talk a little bit about something happy, and that was a meetup that you had in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'd call it San Francisco Meetup 2.
Absolutely. And thanks to Landon, because Landon organized this, picked a great place, an orgasmic brewery.
Wow.
I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
It might have been organic.
Was it that good, actually?
Yeah, it was. It was very good.
Okay.
Very nice. Good beer.
Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of chit-chat somewhere.
There is. Let's hear it.
Hi there, APGS. It's the old pilot here. And we're in the second of my recent San Francisco meetups. And this one is at, where are we, Landon?
So we are at the Santa Cruz Mountain Brewery in Santa Cruz, California. And it is definitely orgasmic, as Nick has like to put it on APG 287. But yeah, we're having a great time. Natasha and I are out here with our two dogs, Guinness and Chico. They're out here relaxing. They just had fun at the beach. Excuse me, that's 2 beers. Just had fun at the beach, nice and sandy and gross, but very, very sweet. And got Fred Sampson here, Connie Edwards, and we got a new guy that is absolutely freaking amazing. His name is Jaime Luke, and he's really, really cool. look for him on the next How I Got Here podcast, or excuse me, installment. And edit that out, please.
Well, it would be nice. We need to get that wonderful guy who does those to actually do one on him. It's just that we've been listening to his backstory from the Air Force of Honduras and through the U.S. Academy, paid for by his government, and then back. And then finally he's made his way to the U.S. to try and become an airline pilot here. But he's got a bit of a way to go, but his backstory is brilliant. I hope one day we'll find out some more about him. Tell us a bit more about what you've been up to at the moment, Landon, and thank you very much again for organizing this meetup here.
Well, lately I've been working a new job in brand protection. So it sounds pretty weird a title, but it's basically keeping new products, their market disruptors, basically secret. And I do it somewhere in the Bay Area. Can't really tell you why. It's kind of a little different from my law enforcement background that I've had for the past 10 years, but kind of sort of the same, using a little bit of the same skill sets and transferring it into a new career. But I'm having a lot of fun. But no more fun than meeting up with everybody in the APG community. And I've developed a new term for people who don't quite yet have APG syndrome, but it's getting there. It's called APGIV. Okay, Steph can probably give you a more better clarification on that. That's if you're 100 episodes or more into it, but not quite 287 episodes. So you might have it. Most people might have it. I think Miami Hick might have APGIV. Or does he have syndrome? I'm not totally sure.
Well, I don't know, but I think Miami Rick has managed to find a cure.
Oh, yes. Actually, Miami Hick found a cure. Go around the cylinder.
No, definitely Miami Rick. We haven't seen him for a while. That's such a shame. Anyways, thank you very much, Steve, for organizing this meetup, and it's absolutely great to hear from you. And brilliant. I'm just going to lean across now to my friend Fred. Hello, Fred.
Hi, Nick.
Anything to say, Fred?
We're friends now?
Well, I'd like to think so. Is that a bit presumptuous of me?
No, I'd like to think so as well. I mean, a nice day flying today, and now we're trying to stay out of the heat.
No, I didn't mention that. So you took me flying again. This time, like on a tandem bicycle.
We're way back in time. We took the lowest technology airplane we could find. Doesn't even have metal or skin on it. It has fabric and has a stick, a throttle, and not much else. So it was a good time.
It was a good time. And I didn't dare ask you a bit earlier, but Fred gave me a bit of a chance to grab the controls. Are you going to critique my flying skills now, Fred?
I'll send you a report, and there's a few things we have to work on, but overall I think it was okay.
Oh, okay. I shall sit in trepidation waiting for that report. Oh, dear. I'm a bit worried now. We didn't crash, though.
We didn't crash, no, Nick. We had fun. We flew around low and slow. Had a little fun at the airport. Just standard aviation fare for a nice weekend here in San Francisco.
It was fabulous. And if that report isn't very good, I'll just put up the video of your landing. Okay. I'm going to move around the table here. The next person on my list is Connie, who's sitting here. Connie, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Oh, gosh, yeah, I just saw you, it was August 12th, you were last through the Bay Area, and we met up. So since then, I did a little road trip up to Oregon. I got to go up to McMinnville to see the Evergreen Air Museum and the Wings and Waves Water Park, which was a lot of fun. That's the one with the 747 and the water slides that come out of it. So that was different, certainly, a lot of fun. And then I actually stumbled across the Tillamook Air Museum up in Tillamook County after a little cheese tasting at the Tillamook Cheese Factory, and so that was really neat. That was in one of those World War II dirigible hangars, so large old wooden construction, and they had lots of different interesting things in there. And I think my favorite part was they had a mini Guppy, or like the Super Guppy cargo plane out in front, painted with the Tillamook Air Museum out front. So that was a fun little thing to stumble upon, and yeah, just trying to beat the heat here. It's a hot summer weekend, so.
So you found the best use for a 747 ever, jumping out of it on a water slide?
Yeah, cut some holes out of it and shoot down some tubes into some cold water. It's it's not bad.
Well, that sounds like the average trip for a customer on a 747, so that sounds perfect.
I suppose so.
No, can't use it absolutely convinced. But you're quite right, the weather here has been beautiful, hasn't it?
It's been good, yeah. Labor Day weekend, going out on a high note.
Excellent. Now I'm moving around the table here, and I'm going to have to disturb a conversation because we've got a new listener here who hasn't been on before, and I'm going to ask him to send some feedback in because this is a fascinating bloke. I've got a member of, or ex-member of the Honduras Air Force here, a fighter pilot, a man who's done a lot of jet flying, and who is now trying to make his way into aviation in America. Now, for all our listeners, perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Captain Nick. It's been a ride. My name is Jaime Luque, and then I came to the U.S. about 2 years ago. I flew with the Honduras Air Force from 2006 till like 2 years ago. Flew the T-27 Tucano there. I spent some time in Columbus, just like Captain Jeff, and I flew the Raytheon Beechcraft T6 there. Then I went back to my country, flew a tweet on steroids back home, the A37. Then it was time for me to either continue on the Air Force or get on my way. Decided to make my way here to the U.S. and trying to find my way here in commercial aviation, hopefully soon.
Now, that sounds a fascinating journey. I'm intrigued by your flying history, and I'd love you to send some feedback in, a little more information about exactly what you've been doing. But now you're faced with the prospect of trying to get into aviation in the United States, and you're looking for some help, perhaps, from any of our listeners who might know how you can use the hours you've gained so far to help you get various certificates.
Yes, I need all the help that my fellow APGers can give me any information on how to get all my flying hours, be certified, to be used here. And I'm actually shopping for a flight school that will take me.
I'm sure there are plenty of flight schools who want to have your money. You've just got to pick the right one for what you want to do.
Yes, and I'm looking here in the Bay Area. I'm working here in the Bay Area full time, as in right now as an Uber driver. So I'm driving people around, and then hopefully I'll get to fly them around.
Well, that sounds fantastic, and we all wish you well. Jeff, we're going to wind up here from this fantastic brewery. Had a marvelous afternoon. Thanks again, Landon, for organising it, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Oh, man. Sounds like you had a great time. I wish that I was out there with you. And,
you would have enjoyed it, Jeff.
That picture that you sent as well is really, really good. A great picture of the group sitting at a table. Were you outside?
Absolutely. The weather was just beautiful. We're in the shade, and the beer was flowing. And we had a great time. And the conversation was just so fun because everyone there was just wholeheartedly wanting to talk, airplanes. And you know how much we like doing that.
Except for Landon's wife, probably.
She's she's a lovely lady. But
not wife, excuse me. I'm pushing things.
Fiance. Exactly right.
Yeah.
But I don't think she quite understands Landon's fascination. Actually, we climbed into a World War II trainer, and I'm a bit tired. So the exact, I think it's I'm going to say a Voltaire.
Go ahead, say it.
A Voltaire Valiant or something. It's a B7, B15, B13, something like that. But it's got a fixed undercarriage as opposed to like the Harvard and the other similar ones that had retracting undercarriage. Anyway, I've got a great picture of him sitting in there. He just looks such at home in that airplane. So I think Landon's spirit is in the air for sure.
Awesome. So I look forward to hearing from Landon, of course, and the new APGer that you met there at the at the
Yeah, he had a
Miraflores Loop.
fascinating history, and his because he was paid by the Honduras Air Force to come across and train at the U.S. Academy and do a lot of flying there, and then he went back and flew back in Honduras. But of course, he did a considerable amount of flying in the United States. So the kind of questions he was asking me, I couldn't answer, which was how much of his flying can he put towards his certificates that he needs to become a commercial pilot. And anyone who kind of understands the legality of that, I think he'd love to hear about that, and whether basically what he can do to offset those hours against what he needs to do to get a commercial license. So if anyone knows the ins and outs of that, plus what he might do with his hours in the Honduras Air Force, I think he'd really appreciate some advice and help.
So that reminded me of when I was in pilot training in the Air Force, Columbus Air Force Base, as he attended. Had a guy in my class that was also from Honduras, and he was going to fly the A-37, which is basically a T-37, but instead of the old centrifugal flow engines that it came with, Cessna took those things out and put in T-38 engines, and without the afterburners. And so that became quite a little rocket of an airplane. And but I can't remember the guy's name right offhand. But anyway, so yeah, if anybody out there knows some of the answers to those questions, please contact us by heading over to feedback@airlinepilotguy.com. All right.
Yeah, please, definitely. We're here to help our guys everywhere in the APG community, and that would be great.
Hey, I had a meetup in Canton, Ohio, just a few days ago, my last trip. And here's a little bit of audio from that. Hey, hello. I'm finally back. Not finally. I am back at my home away from home in Canton, Ohio, after spending a wonderful afternoon and early evening with Paul from Akron, he calls himself, but he's actually not from Akron. He's from Warren, Ohio. And he drove down here with his Aunt Betty and Uncle George, and we just went to an amazing museum at the Canton-Akron or Akron-Canton Regional Airport called the MAPS, although I didn't see many maps there. I was a little disappointed. But apparently that stands for, what, the Military Aviation... What do we call that? Something and something. P.S. I think Aunt Betty knows what it is. We've had a little bit of beer.
Paul's going to look it up right now. Here we go. Does it have it on there? I don't think it does.
It's where history takes flight.
It's where history takes flight.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Wait, let's ask Aunt Betty here. We're going to open up the door to the van. Aunt Betty, what was it? The Military Aviation? Maps. Yeah, we got the maps part. Thank you. Preservation Society? Yes, that's it. It has nothing to do with maps like the thing that you use to navigate, apparently. Anyway, we had a great time there, looking at a lot of great old airplanes, including one of the airplanes I used to fly, the T-37B, one of the airplanes that Nick used to fly, the F-4 Phantom, and lots of other good stuff there. So we really had a good time there. And then we went over to the Royal Docks Brewery, which you'd think would be like on the water somewhere, but it wasn't. It was nowhere near water, but it was really good. It was good beer, good food. What?
The Impaler.
The Impaler, yes. Vlad the Impaler was there, like, there. You know what? I never got a pint of that.
It was a party.
It was really good. A party that we missed yesterday, apparently. Anyway, we had a great time there, and Eric drove down. Eric Wolf from Middlefield, Ohio, drove all the way down as well and met us, and we had some beer and some food and great conversation. So anyway, it was always great to visit with Paul. He usually drives up to meet me in my Pittsburgh layovers, but this time, I don't know, is this a little bit closer or not?
I'm right
about the same. Yeah,
Pittsburgh,
whatever. It was a treat. And Betty, she is awesome. She is an amazing baker. She baked me an apple pie. And tell us what
Halushki.
Gesundheit. Is she sneezing or what? I don't know. Oh no, it's some kind of a, it's some kind of a something that is cabbage and noodles, and it just tastes wonderful. I took a little sample of it. It's awesome. Anyway, so thanks everybody for. You want to say anything to the APG community? No, she says no. Okay. Anyway, thanks. Thanks for putting up with us today. Had a great time. Paul, what do you want to say to the community?
It's a great community, and let's keep up the good work and fly and be safe.
There you go. What else could you want to say? All right, that's it. Captain Jeff out.
Anyway, we had a great time. It was just it wasn't really a formal meetup. It wasn't anything planned. We didn't announce it or anything, but Paul just saw that I was going to be in Canton, and because he lives very close by, he said, "Hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to, meet up with you and have dinner, and I'm going to bring Aunt Betty and maybe one of my uncles." And I went, "Yeah, that sounds like fun." So again, I didn't realize we were going to go to an aviation museum, which was actually pretty amazing. We saw one of Nick's old airplanes. Actually, it was an American version of the Phantom II, the Marine Corps, and we saw a T-37B, and we saw a lot of airplanes, a lot of fighters, F-100, F-84, F-86, a lot of Navy jets. Anyway, it was a pretty cool place, and you could actually go in and sit down in them, and we even sat in one of the.
You could climb into them.
Yeah, you could sit in the actually. A couple of them I thought that it was okay to do, but I looked down and I thought, I'm not sure that the ejection seat is actually safe. So I'm sure that was, but I'm thinking I don't want to sit down in here and then the thing fire off. So I didn't crawl in. But yeah, really nice people. Everybody's volunteer there that works on these things and restores them. And inside they had an A4 from the Blue Angels, and they had a B-26, one of 6 remaining B-26 Marauders in existence, and they have a lot of stuff there. So if you're ever up in Canton, Ohio, and you want to spend some time looking at some amazing airplanes there, head over to Maps. And again, it has nothing to do with the thing that has hills and roads and. It's not like a map. It's Military Aviation Preservation Society, and well worth your time. We spent about 3 hours just walking around and.
Oh, great! Did you actually get it to climb into the F4, Jeff?
I did not. That one was not open. They didn't have a little.
It's only for special people. Sorry.
Yeah. I thought, you know what, that thing's just too special for me.
Yeah, that's okay.
Only very special.
I quite understand it. Yeah.
Anyway, it was we had a good time, and yeah, we went over to that little brewery and drank some great beer. And Eric Wolf came down from Middleton, Ohio, and he is a great guy. He is into he came to the Wings Over Pittsburgh, by the way, so I'm sure that you met him, Captain
Sure.
Nick. He I guess his company now works mostly in like helicopter aftermarket parts and that kind of thing, and he's a fascinating fella. And thank you very much, Eric, for driving all the way down to meet up with us. It was a lot of fun. Okay, so that was my little quick impromptu meetup in Canton, Akron, and that might be for
me.
you.
Ignore me for a minute.
It's your birthday
Sure.
call.
Oh yeah, happy birthday!
Happy birthday to you.
It's
That
time to
sounds
take
good.
A sip of beer.
Well, Jeff,
Yes, sir. It's time for you to go.
time to go.
Okay.
Bye, Nick.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit, Dana. Appreciate that, and have a great dinner. And thanks for being such a great citizen and helping out people and for evacuees and stuff from Florida.
That's all you can do is be nice in life.
Yep.
That gets you a whole lot further in life than being a mean person.
That is true. So get out of here, you jerk.
All right. I'm happy to be a jerk. No, only kidding. All right, we'll see everybody. I'm on vacation this week, so I should have no reason why I can't be on the show.
Okay.
At the end
Well,
of the week. So
we're gonna plan to do something at the end of the week, I think.
all right.
All right. We'll see you then.
Great. Sounds good. Fly
Bye.
safe. Bye.
And let's see. Let's continue on with. Nev is going to be in Dulles, Fairfax, Virginia, at, let's see, next week, I think, September 12th, 13th. He put this on Slack. I thought this would be a good thing to put out there for anybody who wants to meet up with Neville Bounds. And if you're in the area, you really should take the time to do so because he's a quality guy. He says, I have a bit of a plan for my IAD meetup next week. If anyone fancies some food or drink from about 7 p.m. onwards on Tuesday the 12th, I'm staying at Westfield's Marriott, 14750 Conference Center Drive, Chantilly, Virginia, 20151. On Wednesday, the 13th, the next day, I'm going to head over to the Smithsonian Museum, the Udvar-Hazy Center, I'm assuming he means, at about 10 a.m. I need to be back at the hotel by 4. I know that First Officer Craig, Brian, Boeing Bound Bry, is that Brian Parrott, I think? And Rebecca, I think you're in the there you are, Rebecca, have said that they might be around. And he left his cell phone number if anyone wants to get in touch. And do I dare put his cell phone number out there? Yeah, why not? It's +44 7960 169 824. I'll put that in the show notes if anybody wants to ring up Nev and get together with these quality, fine people. Was I right about that, Rebecca? Was that Brian Parrott? That he's usually hanging out with us in the chat room, but I guess not today. Anyway, Boeing Brown Bry, I think that's Brian Parrott. And First Officer Craig, everybody knows First Officer Craig. And so looks like they're going to have a good time on Wednesday. And then finally, he said on Friday, he's going to be doing the PTUK, Plane Talking UK, another fantastic aviation podcast. He's going to be doing the show he's one of their new hosts, by the way. He's doing that from his hotel on Friday at 1 p.m. So I'm assuming by putting that out there, he means that he wants to have a live audience. So if you're around Fairfax, Virginia, Chantilly, Virginia on Friday, maybe contact Nev. Again, his number will be in the show notes. So there you go. Oh, it's Brian G. Okay, I'm sorry. I mixed up the Brian. Too many Brians out there. Brian G is who Rebecca thinks is Boeing Bound Bry. Sorry, there, Boeing Bound Bry, for misidentifying you. Okay. Let's see. Nick was on a long phone call there, and now he's leaving. So I guess it's time for me to continue with the show, and I think that might be a good idea to do something like the Coffee Fund. So let me get here to this page and hit this thing.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Oh yeah. Hey, we're playing the Java Jive. That means that we're going to talk about the Airline Pilot Guy show Coffee Fund. You can become part of the Coffee Fund cadre by providing financial support to the show. And you can learn about how to do that by heading over to the airlinepilotguy.com/coffee page on the website. And let's see, there are a couple of ways that you can contribute to the show. One, the Coffee Fund Classic method via PayPal, and also Patreon. You can become a patron of the show. And since the last episode, we have 3 people actually 2, who contributed via the Coffee Fund Classic method. Stuart Kraft and a recurring payment from Jeff and Anissa Moeller. And the Patreon side of things, we have 2 new pledges, 2 new patrons of the show, Derek Thomas and Evan Shue. I met Evan at the EAA Air Venture in Oshkosh a few weeks back. Evan is from Australia, and it was such a pleasure meeting you, Evan. And thank you for becoming a patron of the show. So if you're listening and you want to contribute in a financial way, again, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. Become part of the Coffee Fund Cadre. You'll be glad that you did.
Taking it slow.
Waiter, percolator. I love coffee, I love tea. I love the job and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, boy. Looks like Nick is back.
I am back. My apologies. Another captain on the phone there. We're swapping first officers for our return flight.
Oh, I don't want to hear about that.
No, it's too complicated to go into. And both of our first officers are very unimpressed because one of them lives in Manchester and he's going to London, and the other one lives in London, near London, and he's going to Manchester. The reasons are just outside of our control, but I feel so sorry for them because they're going to have to both position in opposite directions, actually cross over.
Was it because your first officer just didn't want to fly with you anymore?
Oh, you guessed. Damn. Okay.
I can't stand this bloke.
Yeah, I've nearly run out of first officers now. They're willing to fly with me. It's such a sad situation.
It is a sad situation. Let's see if I can quickly find that.
Oh, no.
So sad. Nobody wants to fly with Captain Nick.
Oh, no.
Now, that can't be true. That can't be true. I'm sure
but
it's
it
something
is
else.
absurd. No,
It is
got
absurd.
fed up with me singing happy birthday to me all the way out.
Yeah, that never gets old. Oh, by the way, did I mention that it's my birthday? Yeah, you mentioned it like several times the last several hours. Oh, okay. Well, I'm old. I'm sorry. I can't remember what I've said.
Yeah, I know. That's the other thing. Do I really have to fly with you? You're so old.
So I was just telling them about Nev being in Fairfax, Virginia, and I went ahead and did the Java Jive thing. And again, thank you everybody for your contributions. It really does make a difference. But I was also going to mention, I think, two more things. I'm remembering one right now. And the one that I'm remembering is Stephen Ivey, right before the show today, said, hey, are you going to be going out to the Scofflaw Brewing Company or Brewery or whatever next Saturday, like we had, said for their 1-year anniversary? And I said, yeah, we're going to do that. So we're going to meet up again at 2:00 at Scofflaw Brewing Company. So anybody in the Atlanta area, come on. I know who all of you are. And I know you're listening.
He knows where you live.
And some of you, by the way, who have come to meetups in the past in Atlanta, didn't show up for the last one, and I'm very disappointed. I was really looking forward to. I'm not going to name any names. Maybe I should, but I'm not. You know who I'm talking about. Expect to see you next Saturday at the Scofflaw Brewing Company, and there was another something that I was going to mention. Also, I know what it is. Dr. John Brown is from Toronto, and he is a doctor, a pediatrician, and not a pediatrician, a general practitioner, and he's also a pilot, obviously. He has a Cicada, I think, Trinidad, a beautiful single-engine airplane, and he's flown it to Columbus for a meetup and also Oshkosh. And he's going to be in Atlanta with his beautiful wife, Brenda. And that is going to be, I'm trying to vamp right now, looking at the meetups channel in Slack. And I know he's going to be here in Atlanta. It's going to be like the 21st, 22nd, something like that. I'll try to put that, if I remember, in the show notes so that you can join up with us. Flying Doctor 17 is his his ID in Slack, and he said, my wife Brenda and I will be flying down from Canada into Peachtree DeKalb on Friday, September 22nd, and he's here for a psychiatry conference. That's probably why he listens to the show, so he can get some research.
Some practice.
Yeah. And he said he wants to get together with the Atlanta APG syndrome sufferers, or AASS. AASS. Again, that's APG, Atlanta APG syndrome sufferers, to continue the quest for the cure. And so, again, we'll put some information about that. I can't recall exactly where we're going to be meeting up yet. I'm not sure if we've nailed that down. But that's going to be Friday, September 22nd. So, again, if you're in the Atlanta area, please put it on your calendar. We need to show Dr. John, the Flying Doctor, a good time, and his wife. We really need to impress his wife. Okay. So, there you have it.
My mind is just going mad here, Jeff, as to how you're going to impress his wife.
Mine too. It's hard for me to concentrate, actually. So I am going to continue with the Evernote notes here. It looks like we've knocked out everything on my intro page. So I guess that means it can only mean one thing.
Stand by for news.
And thank you, Perry. Yeah, I think that is actually where we're going to go. He said, hey, if he's flying into PDK, how about the Downwind or 57th Fighter Group? I think we are going to go to the 57th Fighter Group, which is a great place. And Nick has been to 57th Fighter Group.
I have. I enjoyed it very much. I love that biplane that was sitting just over the fence. It had a great ambiance.
Yes, it did. So that is where I believe we'll be meeting up on Friday, September 22nd. So look in the show notes for more details. And if you haven't joined Slack, we'll have information on how you can do that at the end of the show. Wait a minute, hang on.
Where is Hillel?
Hillel!
Yeah.
Okay, he's there.
You strangled Hillel.
Again?
Poor chap.
Yo, Jeff, go ahead. I'm standing by.
Yeah, he's standing by, he said.
For he sounds like a Muppet.
No, he does sound like a Muppet. All right.
Poor Hillel.
Okay. Let's see. News. Let's start with, you know what I need to do? I need to play this. Bad boys. Well, the good news is a lot of bad boys out there and girls. You guys aren't, you're not off the hook. But usually it's a boy, unfortunately. The unruly Hawaiian Airlines passenger from New Jersey who threatened to kill his girlfriend, her 3 children, along with other passengers and the flight crew. This guy's a peach.
Wow, yeah.
Has been told to repay $98,000 to Hawaiian Airlines after the plane was forced to return to Honolulu because of his behavior. And James August, or August, I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name, pleaded guilty in February to interfering with flight crew members and flight attendants. The incident occurred during Hawaiian Airlines Flight 50, which took off from Honolulu International Airport in November. James August uses that's the caption for the picture, sorry. Just a few hours into the 12-hour flight, the pilot decided to turn the plane around back to Hawaii in order to ensure the safety of all passengers. But the trouble began even before the flight left the ground when a crying 11-year-old boy asked a flight attendant, "Can you please just keep him away from us?" August's girlfriend and her 3 children also then refused to return to their seats in the same row as him. During the meal service, the girlfriend's 16-year-old told a flight attendant that August called him a derogatory word, insulted the children, made life-threatening comments. Anyway, so he's going to be repaying close to $100,000 to the airline, but not the $47,000 in meal vouchers and rebooking costs he incurred, or the airline incurred. Let's see. When the flight attendant asked August to go with her to another part of the plane, he punched her hard in the shoulder. What a classy guy. Anyway, so at least we hear a lot about these passenger disturbances and stuff on these shows, and you always wonder if there is going to be some justice served, and it looks like this guy's going to at least pay for some of his inconveniencing of the airline and passengers. So that is good news.
Yeah, I
And
don't suppose the passengers will see anything of that, but
No.
of course the costs go to the airline because it's
Right.
damned expensive to aboard a flight and put up your passengers overnight and sort them all out. And it's actually nice to see that somebody's actually having to cover the costs of that, because for too long the airlines have just sort of done this and looked after it themselves, and
Yep.
it really is, getting beyond a joke.
It's always discouraging to me, and I'm sure it is to you, Nick, when you hear about all these kind of things going on. I mean, big airlines like ours, this kind of thing happens a lot. And I hear that, at least at Acme, most of the time they just go ahead and, settle out of court and pay off these idiots and people that sue the airline and all that kind of stuff. And they don't really go after the people that cause great inconvenience, and they figure that it's just a cost of doing business. But it's kind of nice when you see them actually, pursuing somebody and taking them to court and actually making them, pay restitution.
Well, absolutely. I think part of the problem is that even in the same country, not every court will treat this with the same amount of seriousness that this judge did. So my hat off to him. It's brilliant.
Your hat's still on.
Yeah, I know. My New York.
Now it's off.
My Yankees hat off to him. That's a big thing, to take my Yankees hat off. So no, it's good to see that he's using his ability to recover costs, and hopefully the message will slowly filter down that it's just not acceptable on an airplane. This is just too dangerous an environment to let loose.
Yeah. Hey, you want to take this other case of justice, the rogue baggage handler, Nick?
I'm having that. Oh yeah, here we go. I can do that for you, sir. No problem at all. So what we got here, we've got a rogue baggage handler aborted airline landing. A former airline baggage handler in Australia, g'day mate, has pleaded guilty to making fake calls to pilots and air traffic controllers, including one hoax that caused a plane to abort its landing at Melbourne Airport in 2016. So, according to ABC.net, the 20-year-old former Virgin Australia employee, Paul Sant, admitted in court to making unauthorized radio transmissions. I've a feeling we covered this.
We did. We talked about it at the time.
Yeah, we did. And
they caught the guy.
Yeah, how stupid it was. Anyway, so he made unauthorized radio transmissions to the crew aboard of 5 Virgin, Jetstar, and Qantas flights, and also admitted to making fake Mayday calls to air traffic controllers. What was the guy thinking? Having said that, on the way into New York today with Boston, we were getting breakthrough on the frequency, and I was listening to some bloke talking about parking a crane against the side of a building. So I'm going, someone is using a radio here that's not tuned to the right frequency, or they're actually using an illegal frequency, because we're all hearing them.
They were down in Florida.
No, they weren't in Florida.
Okay.
No, all they were doing was saying that we've got to push this crane against this building.
Huh.
That's the only bit we could make out. But basically, every time the controller transmitted, we were getting this breakthrough.
Probably getting some side band or whatever they call that.
Yeah, and because undoubtedly someone was using an illegal frequency.
Yeah.
There you go. So it just shows that. But this guy was on purpose getting on the air traffic frequencies and telling aircraft to go around and doing all this thing. So it's brilliant that they actually did something about it.
Yeah, he
so let's
actually he transmitted a false Mayday call as well,
yeah
and he faces up to 20 years in prison. I hope they throw the book at him
yeah
and put him in
absolutely.
prison, because
Yeah.
throwing a book at somebody, if you hit them, it's one thing. A lot of times you miss.
So they arrested him in November, seized a radio piece, connector, and 2 small handheld radios. And court documents revealed that several witnesses claim he dumped the radio transmitter in a lake. Anyway, he's pleaded guilty to charges of endangering the safety of an aircraft in flight and transmitting a false Mayday call, knowing it was likely to endanger the safety of another person. Yeah, that's quite a severe penalty if they give him the full 9 yards, 20 years in prison. That's I wish we could get through to people just
Yeah.
how serious it is when you mess about with airliners.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could get it through to some of our pilots. I was only joking.
Hey, all this, well, not really, it started way before this, but the passenger misbehavior kind of thing really got a lot of media attention, especially social media, during that United incident where they pulled the guy off, Dr. Da.
I remember it
or
well.
whatever.
In fact, it was brought up yet again just a few days ago on another radio program I was listening to.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's still doing the rounds.
It really, well, should we not? I guess we should just skip it then if it was on somebody else's show.
No. It was on the BBC, I think. It was on
okay.
morning TV.
Oh, like a respectable radio show.
Yeah.
Well, the United States Department of Transportation has finished the investigation on the incident involving a United Airline passenger forcibly removed from the aircraft in April of this year. The U.S. authority body concluded that despite the fact that United breached some of the U.S. Department of Transportation's oversales rules, the enforcement action will not be warranted. And the DOT found evidence that United violated rules when the airline provided an incorrect denied boarding compensation amount to one of 5 passengers bumped from the flight, and also failed to provide the required written notice to the passenger who was injured during the incident and his wife. However, the DOT, the Department of Transportation, disregarded these breaches as minor, as the airline latter corrected the DBC amount. Furthermore, the U.S. Department of Transportation found no indications that the airline violated the injured passenger's civil rights. Quote, United did not subject any of the passengers on United Express Flight 3411 to unlawful discrimination. There was no evidence that United discriminated against any of the passengers who were involuntarily denied boarding on Flight 3411 based on their race, color, national origin, religion, sex, or ancestry. So we all remember the video of the bloodied passenger being dragged off the airplane by the security forces. Apparently, the DOT is saying, well, that wasn't United that did that. That was the security people, police, whatever they were. And I'm not sure how, what's going to come of that. But I just thought that was interesting that they didn't get they didn't even get a slap on the wrist for this.
Yeah, that's remarkable. But having said that, all they did was say, look, we're overbooked. We've got to get somebody off. Please help us, to the airport security. And from then on, they left it in the airport security's hands, who made a bit of a hash of it.
Yeah, a little bit heavy-handed, I think.
Yep.
Okay, moving on. Air India. This is an interesting one, I think. The headline says 130 pilots, 430 crew members of Air India likely to be grounded.
Wow.
Why? Well, these crew members had regularly been evading the breath analyzer test over a period of time for flights to and from certain destinations such as Singapore, Kuwait, Bangkok, Ahmedabad.
Ahmedabad, yeah,
and Goa, sources close to the development. So, as part of the Directorate General of Civil Aviation in India, their safety regulations, all pilots and cabin crew must undergo breath analyzer tests before and after flights.
What? Every flight?
I think so.
Oh my God.
I can kind of understand why they kind of blew it off. Well, I don't mean to use that pun, but it just happened. The queries emailed yesterday on the issue to Air India spokesperson went unanswered. Notably, aircraft rules prohibit crew members from taking any alcoholic drink 12 hours prior to the commencement of a flight. So that's a little bit more restrictive than the rules at Acme, which is 8 hours, which is the same as the FAA. Is yours 12 hours or is it 8?
I think the advice is moderate drinking 24 hours, no drinking 12 hours.
Okay.
But actually, that's just
Advice.
advice as to when to stop drinking, because the bottom line is 0 alcohol on your breath.
Regardless of when you stop, you have to make sure
Absolutely.
that you have to have 0 in your
Yeah.
system when you show up for work.
Exactly.
Let's see. Any crew member who tests positive in the pre-flight medical check or refuses to take a breath analyzer test is required to be taken off flying duty for at least 4 weeks, and the airline is required to initiate disciplinary hearings or proceedings. Now, here, sidebar, here in this country, if we denied to take a breathalyzer test, we wouldn't be, we would be taken off duty, but we would be fired. It's not like, you even have a chance to, well, you know what? I take that back. I think there might be some ways to say, look, I have a problem with alcohol, and then you go into like one of those programs that can kind of, get you all straightened out and dried out and that kind of thing. And then I think
usually you have to sort of admit it before you get caught, don't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm not sure exactly how that works, but we do have programs in place, and I think, you may be right that you need to do it before you get caught. And then once you get caught,
when you get caught, it's a bit late.
That's it. Yeah, too late.
Yeah.
And, well, that's one of the problems, I think, with alcoholism is that the denial factor, that most people deny that they have a problem, and that's probably the toughest thing, that if somebody is suffering from any kind of addiction, it's a tough thing to admit to it and then turn yourself in and say, look, I got a problem. I need to, go through some kind of a program to get cleaned up.
Yeah, we rely quite a lot on peer pressure. So, I mean, it's up to me to tell my fellow pilot if I think he might have a problem. I think
you got to. I think you're drinking tonight.
if you get through to him. And then, you just say to him, look, particularly if he's part of your union, and we've got a really strong program within our union that allows guys to take themselves and put themselves into a program and with the union support, and they will then back him up. But if people just wait until they're caught, I'm sorry, that's too late. You have to take responsibility for your actions, and you have to recognize if you have a problem. But if you wait until you're caught and then try and wave the white flag, then it's too late.
Oh. Well, apparently only 224 pilots and crew members of various airlines failed the test in 2016.
It's funny you should mention this. I'm thinking of doing a Plain Tales on just exactly this subject next week. So perhaps we'll cover more of it then.
Yeah, maybe I should have saved this news item then for next week.
No, it's good. It's a good intro.
Okay, good. Little taste. A little.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, I'm amazed that there is an airline that does it every flight.
Yeah.
So what's your policy on Acme?
It's just a random thing, and honestly, I have not been randomly selected for a breathalyzer in, I don't know, more than a decade. And the last time I had a random drug test where you pee in a little container probably was several years ago. So, but it's all random, they say.
Yeah. Well, we have also a random system. The interesting thing about ours is our union very strongly advises that if you've been subject to a test, you should remove yourself from flying for 24 hours. So because of that possibility, the company is actually quite reluctant to do it, particularly en route.
Yeah.
So because they know they may well end up with a crew member going, well, yeah, but I'm sorry. I don't feel comfortable. This is now going to prey on my mind for
Right.
X hours, and I don't feel comfortable now operating the flight. So they step away from it. And,
Yeah, I don't blame them.
Yeah.
Don't blame them at all. Well, wait. We have some breaking news.
I know some more.
Yeah, this is exciting. So Richard McKinney in the chat room says, I just noticed in the YouTube description that Airline Pilot Guy podcast is in the science and technology category. Impressive. Oh, you wise guy.
Yeah, okay.
You know, the way they do the categories, this kind of show, really, there's really nothing that really correctly, they don't have an aviation category on YouTube. And so I just usually just select science and technology. The other one could be travel. Maybe I should put in travel. Same thing with iTunes. They have categories for things. So to find an aviation podcast on iTunes, you have to go to games and hobbies. Now, I don't know about you, Nick, but what you do, is that a hobby or is that like a real job?
No, it's a game.
It's a game. Oh, it's a game. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know. And so games and hobbies, and then the subcategory is aviation. I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of a slap in the face, isn't it?
It is, actually. I just play a big airline pilot. I'm not really one.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, very funny, Richard. Glad to have you here, though, by the way. Anyway, let's move on with our last news item. This one, I mean, it's not really funny. It's weird. Belgian army pilot falls from helicopter during air show. I guess it was the opening day of the 4th Engineer Battalion in Aumale, a province of Liege in France. During a parachuting demonstration, one of the two pilots of an Augusta A109 military helicopter fell from the aircraft. The co-pilot was busy preparing the 3 paratroopers who were going to jump. Immediately after their jump, the co-pilot saw that the pilot's seat was empty and his door was open. The helicopter was starting to fall, but the co-pilot was able to regain control of the aircraft and land safely at Aumale base. The investigation will determine the exact circumstances of the accident, but the body has not been found. So it also goes to say the pilots and co-pilots are not equipped with parachutes. So what do you make of this? Did he commit suicide?
Well, this is not the first report I've heard of this, because
Really?
Yeah, I've read several, but they're all sort of equally terse, and there's not a lot of information. One of them suggested that the pilot had slid back his door, and it's not a sliding door; it's a hinged door. There's others that well, it makes this one makes it sound like the first officer was actually in the back of in the body of the helicopter and not in his seat, which seems unlikely.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't know if we're going to find out any more about this, because as you rightly have said in the past, military accidents, sometimes you don't hear the full story.
Right.
Afterwards, but this sounds very strange, and there are conflicting reports, all based on very limited information. But how a guy would fall out of a helicopter, I really don't know. Would a guy choose that moment to commit suicide? That also seems incredibly
because you'd
unlikely.
be endangering the life of the co-pilot.
Exactly. So I'm pleased that the first of the co-pilot managed to get it back into his seat and get control of the aircraft, the helicopter, because they're very dangerous things, helicopters. You know, you take your hand off the control column, they turn upside down in the drop of a hat.
Yeah, they're not very stable machines.
They're not like an airplane, which would just putter around a bit. So yeah, he did a good job, but this is really weird.
Yeah, very, very odd. It says research is underway and will stop at nightfall. They don't want to spend too much time on it.
God. Yeah, I think translation is another problem. But it was during an air show, for heaven's sake. So I don't understand. Did no one film it, record it? Because if you've got parachutists coming out in an air show, you usually get lots of cameras on them.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised we haven't had more information from the general public.
It says the helicopter was at an altitude of about 400 meters, which was about 1,400 feet, something like that.
Yeah, it's not particularly high.
No, not very high at all.
Oh.
And Gary loves beer in the chat room. No, and according to this article, anyway, it says that the pilots do not wear parachutes.
No,
So-
you don't wear parachutes in a helicopter, in my experience. And you don't have ejector seats either, because
Yeah.
you tend to get chopped up when you go up to the plane.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah. Although they have experimented with downward and sideways firing, and also ejector seats that first jettison all the blades and then pop you out the top.
Oh.
All of which sounds a little bit dodgy to me.
It sounds what we have here in the U.S. Rube Goldberg, Rude Goldberg. What's his name? Darn it! It's like the guy you have. We talked about this in a couple of shows ago.
R-E-B, Rube.
Maybe Rube. That's it. Rube Goldberg. And he was a cartoonist that came up with all these kind of weird contraptions. And didn't you say you had something like that over there in Europe as well?
Heath Robinson.
Yes. It was recent, wasn't it? We talked about
we were. Exactly right.
Heathrow or something like that. It was or somebody's description. Anyway,
to be a helicopter pilot, you have to be able to do this.
That's why I'm not a helicopter. You can be a helicopter pilot.
Rub your tummy and pat your head, and you have to also kick your feet at the same time. Or you need to be able to draw circles in opposite directions. I mean, you have to be well coordinated to fly a helicopter.
I don't think I could do that. No, I can. That's why I'm not a helicopter pilot. All right. Enough of the news. I think we got it all, didn't we?
I think so.
Okay. Time for the best part of the show.
Captain, incoming message.
Let's start with Dave. He says, "My name is Dave." How appropriate. And I'm a private pilot in training from Canada. Want to start by saying that I love the podcast and listen to it during each of my commutes to work. Some would say I have the dreaded syndrome, but we don't speak of that. I currently work as a firefighter here in Canada and have always had a love for aviation. I've been working towards my PPL for a while and have loved every minute. After this is done, my plans are to pursue my commercial through the flight club I currently train at. I feel that this would be best suited for being someone with a full-time career. Thoughts? I'm very lucky with my career right now as we work 24-hour shifts, which means only 2 shifts per week. Long shifts, but gives lots of time off. Because my shift days are variable and cannot commit to school Monday to Friday, do you think doing my training through my private club flight school is the best way to go? I would say probably so, as opposed to a formal, like a 141 school. I would say that doing it in Part 61, flight club, private club kind of thing, little bits and pieces is probably the best thing for you to do while you're keeping your job going, Dave. So Dave continues, my dream has always been to fly for a major airline, but the main goal is just to be able to fly on a commercial level. Being paid to fly just seems amazing to me. It does to me too. And I'm always amazed at that they're paying me to do this. Okay, anyway, my second question is how flexible is scheduling at the regional level? I ask this because if there is a way for me to keep my current career as a firefighter and be able to fly a jet for the regional airlines, I feel I would be very happy. I would imagine so. He says having the safety net of my current 6-figure career with pension and amazing benefits would just make the transition until getting into a major airline that much easier. He says I've logged over 1,000 hours on my at-home flight sim, and even on that I just can't get enough. So I can only imagine the rush I would get doing this in the real world. Okay, so Dave, I think we answered the first part where doing the bits and pieces kind of training is best for you to do it when you're not doing your shifts, and you can keep your regular job, which sounds like a pretty well-paying job, and that's important for learning how to fly because it's expensive. And a lot of people will tell you that listen to the show, they're listening right now saying, darn it, I'm incurring a lot of debt. And it sounds like to me that you don't have to do that with your current job. However, your fanciful idea of working for a regional airline and keeping your career as a firefighter might be a little bit more difficult, in my opinion. I think that when you start off in an airline, a regional airline, you're going to be on reserve, and you're not going to be able to pick and choose when you go to work and when you're going to be on reserve. And I mean, to a certain extent you will be, but I'm just not sure. I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody out there can help me out. Maybe one of the many regional pilots that are listening to the show right now can let us know whether or not this is just a pipe dream or this is something that could possibly work for Dave. What do you think, Captain Nick?
I think you're exactly right, Jeff. I don't think he has a hope in hell, because
Nick is a little bit more straightforward with this answer.
Well, I think that regional airline is going to want him body and soul. They're going to say, look, this is your stepping stone to the majors. You've got to devote your entire time to it. We're going to whip your backside around the country and make you work from dawn to dusk and longer. So that's just the way it will work. When you get senior enough in an airline, you can pick and choose. You might be able to go part-time. You might be able to perhaps resume a career as a firefighter. But it sounds to me like you're just going to have to make the choice. There may be a job for you out there somewhere. If you find, I don't know, a guy who's looking for a relief pilot for an exec jet, or there is someone who does sort of medical flights who's just looking for a standby pilot to fill in, then you might find someone who's willing to take you on just on occasions. But you'll need to know someone. You'll need to make an arrangement with them. You have to both be fairly flexible, and most regional outfits they are not going to be reasonable.
No,
they will just say, if you're not prepared to join us and do the work, then we'll find someone else who will.
But I think you made a good point there about like maybe taking some time off from your job as a firefighter, like a leave of absence or whatever you call it in Canada, where you maybe take 6 months to a year off, and perhaps during that 6 month to a year period, and you gain some seniority, maybe you'd be able to do this and go back to your firefighting job and do the regional flying.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, I think it might need to be slightly longer than a year, perhaps. But
could be, yeah.
I mean, for my airline, it takes guys quite a while to build up the experience before they're allowed to attempt to go part-time. But it does happen. So, I mean, you've just got to explore it with the employer you're looking to, engage with. It wouldn't be easy. Wouldn't be certainly the easiest way to do it. The easiest way to do it is to get all the qualifications, get a job, and then hang your fire hiding. Your what?
What?
I don't know. What was that I just said? Hang your firefighting hat up, not your fire hiding fat up.
Your fire hiding fat up. I understood what you meant, though.
Well, I'm glad you did. And say, right, well, no, I'm an airline pilot, because they're two pretty full-time careers. And actually, and at firefighting, you do get a reasonable amount of time off, but certainly in the airline industry, you don't, unless you're very clever and senior and you've got the right kind of roster manipulation that allows you to sort of fit in your firefighting days off and do a trip and then come back. Why you'd want to do that if you were that senior, I don't know. But you have to get a long way up the tree before you have that flexibility.
I agree. So, I guess it's possible there might be some solutions out there, but might have to put that firefighting job on hold for a bit and just go all in on the flying thing.
Mind you, you'd be damn useful on a Dreamliner, wouldn't you? You'd be able to put that battery fire out, no problem at all.
There you go. That's the airline to go with, or the airliner to go with.
There you go.
Let's see. Mike says, "Hey all, thanks for all you do on this fantastic podcast. I caught the syndrome early this year searching for something to keep me company while delivering all the important junk mail and bills that you get." And by the way, Mike, and Dave, who just said that he sort of has the syndrome. Just this might be something to look into.
Why, hello there. My name is Miami Hick, and I'm here to talk to you today about an embarrassing subject that no one likes to talk about, APG syndrome. Do you have a constant pain in your neck from always looking up at airplanes? Have you tried to grow your own Captain Jeff mustache? Do you think of Miami Rick every time you hear a cricket? Think of Captain Nick when you hear a frog croak. Think of Dana whenever you eat Boston baked beans? Do you think of Dr. Steph whenever you get stuck with a needle? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then you are suffering from APG syndrome. Well, suffer no more. Introducing Go Around Acillin. With only 36 daily doses of an easy-to-swallow pill, you can be free of your symptoms with Go Around Acillin. Talk to your doctor today and find out if Go Around Acillin is right for you. Like all medicine, Go Around Acillin has side effects which include headache, nausea, vomiting, stomach bleeding, bleeding from the ears, nose, and eyes, uncontrolled diarrhea, stomach cramps, yellowing of the teeth, hair and toenails, warts, hair loss, dry mouth, constipation, and stomach cramps.
So Mike goes on, I've had an interest in aviation since I was able to formulate independent thoughts. One of my fondest and proudest memories as a young boy was at Honolulu International on an American Airlines DC-10 when I was 7 years old. At that point, I was already logging hours as a computer pilot. My parents asked if I could see the cockpit during boarding. The captain sat me on his lap as my parents told him to ask me to identify gauges. The captain seemed genuinely impressed as I correctly identified various old-school, steam, I guess you call them, gauges, such as airspeed, attitude, heading. It's a memory I won't forget and reminds me to never forget my passion for flight, no matter what happens. My parents later in life told me I could not go to flight school at Kilo Lima Golf Alpha LaGuardia for aviation college because they said that the job outlook for pilots was so dim. But that's a whole other story. I reminisce about this because I now have a 4-year-old son of my own. He is highly intelligent for his age, and he has taken an interest in planes and flight. We have gone to the Naval Aviation Museum and watched the Blues practice. I took him for a discovery flight out of Pensacola in a 172, and he loved it. He was so excited to be up around the clouds and took the inherent bumpy ride with no fear at all. I took him up for another flight at Montgomery a few months later. Now we live outside Atlanta, and he loved seeing the large jets when we were near KATL, Atlanta International. My question is, are young children still invited into the cockpit before a flight? I would love to take him on a commercial jet, even if to just fly a turnaround flight for the experience. We don't have the opportunity to take a vacation that warrants air travel at this point. I would pay to take him on a cheaper airline like Southwest or JetBlue so he could see the cockpit, feel the thrust of takeoff, look out the window from the flight levels, but I guess it wouldn't be worthwhile without the chance to sit at the controls before the flight. Thanks again, and I hope the little man has the chance to do this soon and solidify his love of all things flight. And I can tell you, first of all, Mike, you don't have to necessarily go to quote-unquote low-cost airlines like Southwest or JetBlue. You could get a very low fare on Acme Airlines as well. So it's just a matter of looking into it and looking for those sales and that kind of thing. And yes, I think that very few pilots currently would turn down a request from anybody before a flight or after. Actually, I would say after a flight may be better unless you are boarding very early on a, when you're starting the flight. But either way, most pilots would be very happy for your little man to come up and sit in the pilot seat and just look around the cockpit and ask questions and that kind of thing. I know that I always enjoy giving cockpit tours to folks, and they don't have to be little children either. There are a lot of, adults that come in and are very interested in what is going on in the front and what all the gauges mean and that kind of thing. So I say, yeah, just ask.
Yeah, I've done exactly the same thing many times. And you're quite right, Jeff. We're a little less busy at the end of the flight, just finishing up the paperwork and much more receptive. Just before departure, it's usually a bit frenetic, so you won't get the same kind of experience. But if you want to take your youngster on a flight, I would severely, I would definitely recommend trying to find a friend who is into general aviation, because whilst you might get a lot out of just flying an airliner, that isn't quite the same experience. I would try and get him up in a light aircraft, because there he really can be at the controls or close to them and see what's going on. And if you're lucky enough to have a friend who has an aircraft and does GA, someone willing to split the cost of fuel, it'll be a lot cheaper, and he'll get a lot more out of it, perhaps.
I agree. That's a great idea. Yeah. So if you know somebody that has an airplane, if you're on the south side of town, I know somebody who loves introducing young people to flying airplanes. This dispatcher that has his own podcast. So anyway, yeah, there are a bunch of opportunities out there for exposing our young ones to this wonderful world of flying airplanes. That's a great idea, Captain Nick.
Yeah, and good luck with him. And because, I mean, we all picked up the bug some point. For me, I was probably around 8 years old. And if he's already showing an interest, it stayed with me, has stayed with me all my life. And when you get that trigger, if it works, then just do it, because if he finds a love for flying, there can be almost nothing better in the world.
A couple folks in the chat room are saying do a young eagle flight, Jen and Lane. So look for young eagles. And another option would be those, what do they call those things? Those introductory flights, like Cessna. A lot of flight schools do, and they're usually not too expensive.
No, they're not. They're usually 30 minutes, chance to fly around.
Yeah.
You'll have to be a little older for young eagles, apparently. Jen says that from 8 years on. But,
okay. Huh. Totally free, too. Wow. Great resource. Thank you, Jen and Lane. Okay, moving on. James says, James here from Charlotte. Just wanted to say I took an extended leave of absence from the show. What? While doing some military training. Oh, okay. But have now been released back to the world. I'm glad to be able to listen to the show again. As ever, keep up the great work. Thanks, James.
Yeah,
thanks,
man.
We'll do that. Great to have you back.
Absolutely.
Hope the military didn't, wasn't too hard on you.
No. How were all those potatoes you had to peel?
And all those miles of trails you had to hike with 150-pound packs.
I bet he did something really exciting that he can't tell us about.
Probably so.
Probably.
So G-Man from Australia, because his name is, how would you pronounce that, Captain Nick? Glaucus.
Yeah, we tried this last time, and I was thinking Glaucus, but
that's what I'd say. But apparently that's not right, because he said just say G or G-Man.
Yeah, so I wish you'd send him a bit of audio feedback, so we could find out how to do it, because we like to learn.
Yeah, we do.
It's an unusual name, so we'd love to know how it's said properly.
Hey, we're both old dogs, but we can learn new tricks.
Woof woof.
So anyway, he sent this link. He says, just a quick feedback regarding the age fleet of many airlines, pointing out which one has the oldest fleet. Yeah, Acme has the oldest fleet. Thank you very much. Anyway, the article talks about the age of airplanes and that kind of thing and reliability. And it says, so is it true that the older the airplane, the less reliable they are? And I want to say, no, it really depends upon the maintenance that you have at your airline and how much, emphasis they put on, especially the, what do they call that? The preventive maintenance.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And staying on top of all these, these maintenance carryover items, MCOs, we called them. There are certain things that we're allowed to fly with in our minimum equipment list for a certain amount of time. And sometimes when they're not paying close attention to providing that preventative maintenance or attacking write-ups right off the bat, they tend to start piling up, and it can get rather complicated as a pilot when you get on an airplane and you pull out the logbook and you see all these different write-up, these different maintenance carryover items, and then you have to consider, how they interact with each other. And it's always so refreshing to get on an airplane and the logbook has no open write-ups in it and no carryover items. And I know from anecdotal evidence and experience that even old airplanes, if properly maintained, and the maintenance technicians staying on top of knocking out these little write-ups here and there, these airplanes can be just as reliable or more reliable than even the newer airplanes.
Well, absolutely right. I mean, some of the new airplanes we're moving into new technology. So when you're talking about carbon composites and other materials which we're building modern airliners out of, none of those airliners have done 20, 25 years yet. They're all very new. It'll be interesting to see how they do survive the years. Whereas, of course, the old style aluminium airplanes, we've been flying them for many years now. So that's technology we know and understand. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the next generation of airliners does cope with 10, 20, 30 years of flying, and whether they'll still be as safe.
It will be interesting. And speaking of old airplanes, I don't know if you ever if you saw this article, Nick, that was being bantied about on the social media, and most people were tagging me in it because
really,
yeah. So this,
why would they do that?
Well, this is article. Michael and Al and several others mentioned this. Apparently, a couple journalists, I'm using air quotes, from Bloomberg decided to write an article about the good old Mad Dog, the airplane that I fly.
Oh.
And let's see, how do I do this? The airline that I fly for also flies these airplanes. But this article says, the headline is, Delta will promote pilots to captain if they can fly this aging plane. So I thought, well, this is interesting.
If. What do you mean if?
If you can fly this aging plane.
Is that like a test?
I think so. Well, so I started reading this article. In the second paragraph, well, first of all, let me start from the beginning. Since almost the beginning of the commercial airline business, junior pilots have had to toil years in the second chair. Waiting to win a pair of captain's wings. Now, Delta Airlines is offering them the chance to vault into a captain's seat in as little as 6 months. The catch? The promotion requires flying an unloved, aging plane nicknamed the Mad Dog that Delta plans to retire in 3 years.
Oh dear!
I know, it's sad.
Unloved and aging.
Yes. The McDonnell Douglas kind of reminds me of myself, actually. The McDonnell Douglas Corporation MD-88 jets are the oldest aircraft in operation at any major U.S. carrier. That's not right. The 88s that Delta flies are not as old as the MD-80s that are flown at American Airlines and some other airlines. Just thought I'd throw that in.
That was 6 months younger?
No. These the 80s that first came out, they came out, guess what? In the early 80s. And the jets that Delta flies were delivered in the late 80s, 88, 89, 90 through 94, I believe. Anyway, they come, this is the part that really kind of let me know that the people that write this article, the writers have no idea what they're talking about. They come with quirks such as glare-prone skylight panels called eyebrow windows that were common when pilots sometimes navigated by the stars.
Oh, really? They think they're for taking star shots?
Yes.
Oh, the foolish people.
So anyway, they go on to talk about the fact that that there have been some very, very quick upgrades to captain on this particular airplane. And I will say that that is true. And we've talked about it a few times on this show. And part of the factoring into this is the fact that, yes, this airplane is slated to be retired. It is the oldest in the fleet. Also, the base in New York is a very, very junior base, and not many people want to commute to fly captain on this particular airplane. I do understand that if you're going to be with a company for 25, 30 years, that flying an old airplane that they've already said that they're going to retire is something that you have to think twice about. And I can see the reluctance to want to fly, go through training on an airplane that's scheduled or slated for retirement soon, because, going through training is not, is not something that, you just cavalierly go through. It takes a lot of energy, a lot of studying, a lot of stress to learn a new airplane. And I get the fact that you don't want to do that unless you get something in return for it. And so that part of it is sort of correct. But this is what I think. So several people said, "What do you think about this, Jeff?" And I said, "Well, this is what I think. These two Bloomberg writers, or one of them, was at a cocktail party or something, and they're talking to people, and they happen to be talking to this guy or gal, most likely a guy, that flies the Mad Dog for Delta Airlines. And he's had a few drinks, and he's starting to badmouth the airplane. And people are asking, well, yeah, I've heard that people are getting upgraded like in 6 months to a year, seniority. And why is that? And he's probably saying something, about how quirky the airplane is and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't really quite understand what he said about the eyebrow windows, misunderstood it, and misunderstood exactly why, people may be reluctant to fly the airplane and that kind of thing. So that's my guess. I bet that's what happened here. Anyway, it generated a lot of attention in the community, and a lot of people, who I'm talking about out there, sent the link to me. And so I'd say that this is sort of like half fake news and half real news.
You know what I'd like to say, Jeff?
What?
That list of which major airlines has the oldest fleet, there's 30 airlines in there, and Acme Red doesn't appear. So
yeah, you have new fleet, don't you?
We have new airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
We have good airplanes.
So Nick is equating new with better.
Yeah, I am, because they're shiny and they've got all the latest gizmos. And the 330 I flew in today took off with no snags. It hadn't had any snags for the last several sectors. Landed with no snags. They'll turn it around. I have absolutely no doubt it'll head off home in the same condition. And they're like clockwork.
In my experience with a company that's very similar to Delta Airlines, which is at the top of the list with the oldest airplanes, 17 years, I have, I had a lot more issues with old airplanes when I was flying the 727 and the L-1011 compared to the Mad Dog that I've been flying for 15 plus years now.
Oh, you see, the Mad Dog is at heart a McDonnell Douglas airplane?
Yes.
Yeah, whereas the 727
was here we go.
Boeing. So
okay.
What do you expect?
There you go. Hey, the airline that's consistently rated amongst the best airline in the world, Singapore, is number 16 on the list.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway.
Even China Southern, who hasn't been around that long, is number 20.
Yeah. So, what's important here, it is nice to have new airplanes, but you can fly old airplanes are built. They're not like cars, like in 4 years, 5 years, you're thinking this thing's starting to fall apart. I need to fly, get a new car. Airplanes are kind of designed to fly for 25, 30 years. And if you maintain them properly, they'll be very reliable. And it just depends on the particular airline, how much emphasis they put on maintaining the older airplanes, and they decided that, no, it's not worth spending the time on it. For instance, the L-1011 fleet, that airplane went through little cycles. I flew it for 3 years, and there would be a several-month period where the airplane was a very reliable airplane because the maintenance folks were concentrating on fixing all the little write-ups they had here and there, and it was very reliable. But then when they decided, you know what, we needed to spend our time on these other airplanes and not pay close attention to the older airplane because, hey, you know, they said that we're going to be retiring them soon. Then all of a sudden it became very unreliable. So I think the key is not the age of the airplane, but, you know, the maintenance of it. And
no, you're absolutely right, Jeff. I mean, because after all, during an airliner's life, it'll be stripped down to the bare bones at intervals and put back together again.
Yeah.
And you don't do that. You don't invest that kind of maintenance unless you are seriously going to keep that airliner for a long time.
Yep.
And when you do that kind of maintenance, you pull something completely apart and reassemble it and find out every problem and fix it. That's when you invest, and that's when an airliner lasts for years. But there are some airliners like the 747 and the A340 that have reaching a premature end of their life. And I say that quite genuinely about the 747. It's got exactly the same problem that all the four-engine major big airliners have. Is that their fuel consumption is just too high compared with the big twins nowadays. So they're being scrapped early, and I'm no doubt that a lot of the 747s would have continued on for many more years, despite the fact that they were coming up to 30 years old, and they would have carried on going, because if it's economic for an aircraft of that size just to keep it going if you can. But modern economics say that that's not right. You've got to turn it into beer cans and pull something plastic and put it in its place.
Right. And I was going to say also, very good point, by the way, that if you look at this list and then you look at the profits and how successful the airline is compared to all the other ones in the list, a lot of people would say, looking at this list and an airline using older airplanes, maybe that was kind of a smart thing to do.
Yep, I quite agree, because their number one is Delta, and they're probably the most profitable airline in the world.
I think they are. I'm not sure. I have some friends that work there, and I think that's what they told me.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably fair. So, you know, driving all these old bangers around might be worthwhile.
It might be. But there might be a time when they finally go, you know what? You know, when the fuel starts going up in cost, that, okay, we need to take a look now at our strategy. Maybe this is not a good strategy anymore. We need to buy the new stuff.
Yeah, good point.
Georg sent this email to me, and he says, looks like a bunch of Acme jets went for a swim. Hope they got swimming lessons first, and they gave me this link to a reddit.com article. And he says, I hope they can be used again, and this is the aftermath of the extensive flooding in Houston. And this photo that he, I don't know if you're looking at this or not, Nick.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
This is not a real photo. This is Photoshop.
Yeah.
These airplanes are not underwater. This is fake news, and I guess that was being put out there, and a lot of people were biting.
Well, there was so much rubbish from that. There were photographs being used from previous floods that had absolutely nothing to do with the current situation. It just worries me that people just grab pictures and just throw them out there. And this is completely faked.
Yeah, very fake. So I'm happy to tell you, Georg. And somebody else said, why didn't they like fly these airplanes away and avoid this flooding? Well, they did, and they didn't get flooded. This is just all fake.
Yeah. The only one that's not fake is that 747 they've turned into a water slide. That's not fake.
That's real.
Yeah, that's real.
But they did that on purpose, though, I think.
Well, it's good use for it, quite honestly.
Okay, moving on. Iowa Matt. Oh, no. He says, Dana and Jeff, you're off the hook here, Captain Nick. I don't think you were on the show.
Off the hook.
I am quite, yes, you are. I'm quite disappointed in the both of you. that plane was not a Beaver. It was a Turbo Otter. The GPS was a simple handheld. So he's talking about the show where somebody had received a wonderful gift to fly in a seaplane, and I forgot the airline now. So one of the airlines up in the Seattle area, and Dana and I thought that the photograph that this guy took was inside of a Beaver, but apparently it was a Turbo Otter. So sorry, Matt. So our accuracy rating now, I think, is probably dipped below 50% again.
Someone took a picture inside a Beaver.
Yeah, can you believe that?
Can you do that? I mean, is that feasible?
Yeah, with modern equipment, you can do that.
Wow,
modern photography.
I'm impressed.
Yes, I'm trying to find. I wish I hadn't deleted my little sound effect that I had. We were talking about the never mind. Darn it! I'll have to put it in right here. Okay. It was the airplane movie where Leslie Nielsen says, no relation, by the way, unfortunately. He goes, "Nice beaver."
Yeah,
"Thanks.
exactly.
I just got it stuffed."
What
Anyway.
a great movie.
Yeah. Anyway, he says, on a side note, this Iowa mat was formerly known as Seattle mat. I got tired of never getting a meetup out there, so I moved to the beautiful Midwest. You should wave next time y'all fly over. Jeff, I know you're getting excited for football season. Not sure why, though. Auburn is going to be terrible yet again. Roll Tide. So we have a big rivalry here, Captain Nick. Alabama, University of Alabama. They're the Elephants, but everybody calls them the Tide, and they always say Roll Tide. And Auburn, who are the Tigers, the other part of the state, and everybody calls them the War Eagles, although the mascot is actually the tiger.
I'm not the least bit confused, don't worry.
Yeah, so anyway, he's trying to pimp me because Alabama is ranked number 1 again. Yeah, they're just a formidable football power in the SEC. Anyway, thank you very much for the nice greetings, Iowa Matt, and for slapping us down and making our accuracy rating dip below 50%. Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Jake writes in, says, Jake from Charlotte, I've wanted to send my first feedback for some time now, but I just didn't have anything interesting to say. You don't need to send it. You don't have to have anything interesting to say, Jake, to send him feedback.
Just listen to us. We have nothing interesting to say.
I'm not sure who's interested in this stuff. Wanted to know if Captain Jeff has any experience with an event involving the once great Pan Am. For decades, Pan American World Airways struggled to stay afloat due to a multitude of factors, but it was able to sell assets and routes to keep the money flowing in. However, on August 12, 1991, all that came to an end, and what was left of Pan Am became Acme Airlines property for the cost of approximately $1 billion in cash and liabilities. Along with this, hundreds of Pan Am sky gods became Acme sky gods, and he says, in parentheses, I'm sure that's what you refer to yourself as. Yeah, that's what we refer to ourselves as, sky gods.
That's not what we refer to them as, but don't worry about that.
And started flying mostly the A310 and 727. They bought a segment of Pan Am, and it was basically the 310 fleet. I think there was maybe a few 727s in there, but mostly 310s, and the pilots associated with those airplanes, which is kind of odd. Anyway, he says, my question is, were you at Acme during this time? Yes. And did you ever fly with any of the pilots who came over from Pan Am? Yes. Also, what is everyone's opinions of Pan Am? I think Pan Am was a great airline. And in fact, Captain Nick did an amazing plane tales on the flying boats and an incident involving a Boeing 314 flying boat the days before Pearl Harbor, actually on a flight during the attack on Pearl Harbor. And it was so interesting, in fact, that I ended up buying the book that was used for a lot of the information that Captain Nick used in his wonderful Plain Tales episode. And I'm enjoying it. I'm about halfway through the book, and it's just awesome. I think that Pan Am, Juan Trippe, and Pan Am and the flying boats, the Clippers, and all that kind of stuff, the history of this airline is just fascinating. And
it is fascinating. I mean, it was such a well thought of airline that, can you think back to the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Yeah.
Right. Well, the spaceship that was fired off to go out to the space station that was surrounding the Earth was a Pan Am spaceship.
Oh, I didn't realize
Absolutely.
that.
And that, you know, that's how confident people were that Pan Am was going to be around until the space age, that they were actually putting their logo on the spaceships on that movie, because they no one could imagine ever imagine Pan Am crashing like it did, coming down.
So many great airlines that that just aren't here today, and you're thinking, wow, could anybody imagine that they wouldn't be here?
Yeah, but the guys that built the airline and made it what it was were no longer really at the helm at the end.
Yep.
And that's the problem. You know, yeah, the airline was brought down by imbecile. I don't know, I shouldn't say that probably. By people who weren't as clever as those that built it, and they caused its demise.
Yep.
Such a shame.
It all has to do with all about the business of the airline, and not the fantastic people that were piloting these airplanes and working as crew members on these airplanes. And
when you speak to old Pan Am employees, they have such a love for their airline. I mean, it really was remarkable, and they still talk about it with such glowing terms. And they were all just so disappointed in their management when the airline eventually just ran out of money.
Yeah, really a shame. You know, Pan Am, TWA, Braniff, Eastern, so many airlines out there that were just stalwarts of the aviation.
Oh, absolutely. We never thought they'd end. Never.
No. And they're gone. Oh, anyway. Well, hey, I need something to cheer me up. I think it's time for. Will this cheer me up?
No, it won't, Jeff.
I don't think so.
It has a warm feeling towards the end, but
okay,
it's
good.
A sad story.
Okay, well, it's time for Plain Tales.
The Old Pilot's Plain Tales. The Hunger Winter.
The beautiful Hollywood actress Audrey Hepburn spent her life suffering from medical problems that originated from her childhood. The rain in Spain stays mainly in the plain. Who would have thought, while she spoke such famous lines, she suffered from acute anemia, respiratory illness, and edema caused by malnutrition early in her life. She wasn't the only one by far, but just one of the many children living in the Netherlands who would suffer through the Dutch famine of 1944 and 45. The Hunger Winter, as it was known, occurred in the German-occupied part of the Netherlands, and in particularly the densely populated western provinces north of the great rivers. A German blockade had cut off food from the farming areas in response to a national rail strike, and now some 3.5 million civilians, under the grip of some 120,000 German troops, were starving. The strike had been called to aid Operation Market Garden. Field Marshal Montgomery had conceived a plan that would end the war in one quick blow. 3 airborne divisions were ordered to grab and hold a number of bridges behind enemy lines and form a corridor from Belgium through Eindhoven, Nijmegen, and finally to Arnhem, the bridge that would lead them across the final part of the Rhine. In one big hop, the British forces would be in the Ruhr, the industrial heart of Germany. If it worked, it was believed that the war would be over before the end of the year. The Dutch government in exile, convinced of a quick end to the war, decided that the Allied operation would be aided if they called for a railway strike in occupied Holland. The strike would seriously hamper German mobility and prevent a quick German counterattack in the early stages of the operation. The strike became a reality, and the Dutch underground followed the orders with great enthusiasm. Within one single day, the majority of the railroad personnel disappeared underground. All traffic by train stopped, whilst the Germans struggled to get personnel from Germany to fill the gaps. Operation Market Garden, the strike to the Rhine, failed. It was a bridge too far, and the Dutch faced another winter of occupation. The German retaliation for the strike was another severe blow. As punishment, a blockade was created to cut off food supplies to the major cities, particularly the densely populated western provinces north of the great rivers, and whilst in the grips of a hard winter, 3.5 million Dutch people faced starvation. Although the Nazi embargo was partly lifted in November, allowing some food in by barge, soon the canals froze over, and that effort ground to a halt. The physical and emotional hardship of that winter pushed the population to the limit of their endurance. On top of more than 4 years of occupation, the Dutch suffered a brutally cold winter. Not only did the occupiers block the delivery of food, they destroyed dikes holding back the North Sea, which caused devastating floods to the coastal farmlands. Driven to desperation, the starving Dutch ate fried tulip bulbs and even cut their hair, boiled it, and drank the broth for protein. By April 1945, the British military estimated that more than 500,000 residents of Holland were on the brink of death. The Dutch royal family, who had escaped to London, appealed to the Allied powers for help. If a major catastrophe, the like of which has not been seen in Western Europe since the Middle Ages, is to be avoided in Holland, something drastic has to be done now. Dutch Queen Wilhelmina desperately wrote to British and American leaders. Churchill was sympathetic, and President Franklin D. Roosevelt, proud of his family's Dutch roots, pledged American aid. "You can be very certain that I shall not forget the country of my origin," he wrote to the Queen. Not until after Roosevelt's sudden death 3 weeks later were his wishes for a mercy mission to the Netherlands relayed to the Allied Supreme Commander, Dwight D. Eisenhower, by U.S. Army Chief of Staff George C. Marshall. The Nazi commissioner who ruled over the Netherlands was a man called Arthur Seyss-Inquart. After the war, he would be tried, found guilty of war crimes, and hung. But at the time, seeing how the war was going, he permitted the negotiation of a truce in return for allowing food into the country. The Allied leaders were adamant that only unconditional surrender would be the basis of the Nazi capitulation. However, Eisenhower was permitted to consider a truce to save Dutch lives. Prince Bernhard acted as an intermediary, moving between Eisenhower in Reims and Seyss-Inquart, until finally the conditions for a truce were established. With the approval of Churchill and Stalin, it was agreed that, if Montgomery would stop his advances during Operation Market Garden, an attack that had already stalled, then relief flights might start. The need for quick action was urgent, as frequent deaths from malnutrition were already being reported by the Dutch resistance. Eisenhower called Air Commodore Andrew Geddes for a meeting and told him that he had the lives of millions of Dutch people in his hands. He was given the control of 2 RAF bomb groups with their pathfinders and 3 wings of the 8th Air Force. In the meantime, the BBC broadcast to the Dutch people.
This is the BBC. The Allied Supreme Commander has given orders to drop food by parachute in order to relieve the burden of the Dutch people in the final stages of battle. A large number of aircraft will engage in this mission by day and night to deliver the food. These aircraft will not be used as means of war, but only as the transportation of food for the starving population.
At RAS Stradishall, number 186 Lancaster Squadron started trials on how to deliver the food. Bags dropped from over 500 feet burst, spraying flour in white clouds and turning the potatoes into mash. At under 500 feet, basically skimming the treetops, the food would arrive intact. Having solved the delivery problem, they then needed hundreds of sacks at very short notice. They approached a nearby US base, and the colonel was very sympathetic, but said there was no way permission would be granted in time. Of course, the colonel mentioned, petty theft is a big problem, and there aren't enough MPs to guard everything, especially when the hangar isn't locked, and the MPs are all on the other side of the base, as they will be this evening. I don't suppose anything would be noticed until at least 20 minutes after the last sack left. That night, 1,500 heavy sandbags unexpectedly went missing, and when the police chief inspector visited the RAF the next day, he was quietly eased off to the officers' mess for a gin and tonic with the station commander. On April the 29th, 1945, Royal Air Force Lancaster heavy bombers, manned by British, Australian and Canadian crew members, departed England on the first flights of Operation Manna. To increase the load they could carry, they left behind armament and protective armor plating. The flight to Rotterdam was made at 1,000 feet below the cloud base. 10 minutes before the drop, they were forced lower. As the city came into view, they found themselves surrounded by dozens of other Lancasters. The scene on the Rotterdam racecourse, the dropping zone, was extraordinary. There were hundreds of planes packed onto the approach, and despite being warned of the danger, there were people below scurrying about grabbing supplies, whilst more still were dropped. After the drop, aircraft continued over Rotterdam at only a few hundred feet, often below the height of the four-story houses and dipping into the wide avenues. The population knew they were coming, and there had been another radio broadcast that morning.
Bombers of the Royal Air Force have just taken off from their bases in England to drop food supplies to the Dutch population in enemy-occupied territory.
The flat roofs of the city were covered with orange flags and thousands of cheering people. Infected with the obvious enthusiasm of the Dutch people, the crews waved cheerfully back. 20 years old at the time, Flight Lieutenant Harry Parkins recalled his Operation Manna missions. After completing my 39th bombing operation on April 25, 1945, to Hitler's hideout in daylight, he said, air crews were asked to take out all the ammunition and guns from our Lancasters, because an agreement had been reached with the Germans to allow us to drop food to the starving Dutch. April 29th was the first of 6 operations to Valkenburg, Delft and Rotterdam, dropping food. The last drop was on VE Day. On the first trip, we found that, because the Germans didn't trust us, they had put up many poles in the dropping areas, causing the sacks of flour to burst open. Our wireless operator, on seeing these white puffs of smoke from the bursting flour sacks, thought the Germans were shooting at us, and suddenly let out a violent scream, saying he'd been hit in the leg. I rushed to him and started to take off his flying boots and socks, but I couldn't see any blood or injury. Looking across the aircraft, I found one of the bomb clips, where the bombs were winched up before a raid, had flown off when the bomb bays were opened to drop off the food. The slipstream would have blown it against his leg. We all had a laugh at his expense, but didn't have the heart to report it. On our other Manna trips, we flew just above the rooftops to get as low as possible so as not to damage the food too much when we dropped it. Below, on the frozen ground of Holland, Harry de Jong, a 17-year-old student, wrote in her diary, "There are no words to describe the emotions experienced on that Sunday afternoon. More than 300 four-engined Lancasters, flying exceptionally low, suddenly filled the western horizon.
One could see the gunners waving in their turrets, a marvellous sight. One Lancaster roared over the town at 70 feet. I saw the aircraft tacking between the church steeples and drop its bags in the south. Everywhere we looked, bombers could be seen. No one remained inside, and everybody dared to wave cloths and flags. What a feast! Everybody is excited with joy. The war must be over soon now. One Canadian pilot recalled flying by a windmill and people waved at us from its balcony. You understand, we had to look up to wave back. Sergeant Ken Wood, a rear gunner, remembered, people were everywhere, on the streets, on the roofs, leaning out of the windows. They all had something to wave with, a handkerchief, a sheet. It was incredible. Flight Sergeant Gibson also wrote, I will always remember seeing "Thank you, Tommy" written on one of the roofs, and he recalled, those flights were a beautiful experience. It was as if we brought the liberation closer to reality. Shortly after the RAF flights, the American Air Force joined in the operation, which they named Chowhound. The Americans added 400 aircraft to the operation and doubled the amount of food delivered. Max Krell remembered his mission to The Hague. It is rainy and cloudy today, but within a few minutes all the bombers are airborne. The group crossed the coast at 1,500 feet. Max remembered seeing the German soldiers at the anti-aircraft guns looking up at them. They seemed close enough to throw rocks at them. He continued, the airfield was located without difficulty and the drop made from 400 feet. The wheels and flaps had to be lowered and the power settings were changed to cut back the speed to 130 miles an hour. In the meanwhile, several of the crew members are able to see the whole show that is going on below them. Max recalled, such signs of celebration we have never seen before, nor since, as the people hurried to retrieve the food from the sky. People waved at the planes, flags were everywhere, and we had no doubt that the effort had been appreciated. Each package seemed to have a recipient soon after it hit the ground, no matter where it landed. Norman Coates, a belly turret gunner, wrote in his diary, on May the 3rd there was another Mercy mission to Holland, very low altitude. I believe I must have waved at everyone in Holland. The great fields of tulips are beautiful. They had "Thank you" spelled out with rocks. They could see me waving at them because they would point at each other and bring attention to it. Some of them had American flags waving. Despite the best efforts of Operation Manna and Chowhound, it is estimated that 22,000 people starved to death during the hunger winter. 3,100 flights were made by Bomber Command and a further 2,200 by the American Air Force. They dropped 11,000 tons of food before the German surrender allowed other, better ways of feeding the deprived Dutch people. A poem was written about the life-saving flights. An aeroplane skims over the land, the low country called Holland, country of hunger, persecution, and sorrow. In the streets, people gaze at the sky. An airplane circles around. The pilots drop their food. People cry. People cheer to the skies. Food, food, food.
I can't help but think of how, I don't know, similar it is to perhaps what may be occurring here in the next week after the aftermath of this huge hurricane that's about to hit Florida.
Oh yes, absolutely, Jeff. These major catastrophes, whether they're human created or a natural disaster, affect so many people, and whether it affects millions or thousands or even hundreds. For those involved, it's just as big a tragedy.
Yeah. And, with these horrible tragedies, we sometimes see the best in human behavior.
Absolutely. And, I think it was so nice for those guys. There was one guy there who had flown 39 bomber missions. So he was had run out of luck, really. You think about it, because it was so rare for those crews to survive that many missions. But they flew their last flights, many of them, in their Lancasters before the war ended, and they never flew again. Flying those life-saving missions, it must have been quite wonderful to, not be dropping bombs and not be killing people, but just be taking food to the starving Dutch people and hope that they might save some lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Another outstanding Plain Tales. Thank you. By the way, we had mentioned that we're going to have a separate Plain Tales feed and page on the website. We are working on it. It's just I didn't realize how many of these things you've done.
Yes, I know.
It's taking a lot of time.
They're slowly creeping up in number, aren't they? There's quite a few.
Not quite as many as the actual APG episodes, but still quite a few. So we'll let you know, hopefully soon, that will be live. Let's see. Speaking of tragedies and tragedies to come and storms and that kind of thing, Dave quickly wrote in, with Irma coming towards Florida, where would Acme send their planes? Do they go to Acme hub airports, or are other airports willing to take planes for a time being? Most of them go to the hubs of the various airlines because they usually have space for extra airplanes. But, if they run out, then they will find airports that do have extra space. So that would be my answer for that. Let's see. Oh, and I want to make sure I get this in before we end the show. Pilot Armando writes in. He says, "Hey, Captain Jeff, Nick, Dana, and Steph. Just wanted to take a moment to highlight the upcoming Reno Championship Air Races from the 13th through the 17th of September. So that's just in a few days. I encourage everyone to come out and see a full week of good racing and some beautiful aircraft. The teams are incredibly varied, with some having tremendous resources, aka money, to ones like ours that scrounge together lawn chairs, coolers, cases of oil, and all our savings to try and give the big boys a run for their money. I'll be out there with Team Bad Dingo and the Race 56 Lancer 360. Any APGs out there, swing by and say hi." And I'll include a beautiful photo that he sent in his message of, I guess this is him, or somebody on the team anyway, flying this beautiful airplane at some air race. I'm assuming it's the Reno Air Race. I've never been there myself. I would like to go and do that sometime. I'm not going to be there this year, but if anybody listening is thinking about heading out to the Reno Air Races, please look for Armando, Pilot Armando, and he's with the Team Bad Dingo in the Race 56 Lancer 360.
That looks like great fun.
It does. And let's see. Oh, this is an interesting one. Captain Nick, I have no idea if this is a bunch of BS fake news or if it's real, but I'll read it anyway. Thomas says, "Hey, Captain Jeff and the rest of the crew, I just stumbled across this article. Thought you may find it interesting. If possible, it would also be appreciated if you were able to elaborate on the contents of this article." So the article he sends is "Flight Secrets Revealed." What a flashing seatbelt sign really means.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So here we go. Flashing seatbelt signs on a plane have recently been revealed to mean this terrifying problem on board. Waiting for the seatbelt sign to be turned off is the first things passengers do when a plane is taking off. I'd say most people don't even pay attention to it, actually. Anyway, however, it can also mean something else entirely, depending on how it's lit up. A flight attendant recently revealed that if any travelers see the sign as flashing during takeoff or landing, it could mean something else entirely. The true meaning is somewhat terrifying to realize.
What?
Yeah, Annie Strand, a cabin crew member, wrote on online forum Quora what it actually means. She commented, quote, "This means the situation is so severe that the pilots don't even have time to inform us that we're doing a safety landing," a nice word for evacuation or emergency. "If I see this, it means that we're approximately 30 seconds from impacting with the ground, and who knows what happens next. In that 30 seconds, I have to pull all my fear of dying aside and yell, 'Bend down,' as my life depended on it. It's not the only..." Okay, so... what? I don't even know how you flash. Do you have the capability, Nick, to flash the seatbelt sign over and over?
Yeah, we used to use it, or we use actually it as a signal. Yes, we flick it on and off.
Yeah.
As a signal. So we flick it on and off before we line up as a signal that we're needing that final indication that the cabin is secure.
Yeah.
And it's about
no, I think you're hiding something. I think you know that she's right.
All right then.
Sorry, Thomas. Annie Strand, so-called flight crew or cabin crew member, is pulling your chain.
Well, we do it again at 5,000 feet to indicate that we're at 5,000 feet, and they've got about 10 minutes to get the cabin secure.
Yeah.
I mean, but the cabin should already be secure, but it's just a reminder that now's the time to finish your final preparations for landing.
So we use either the no smoking light, or sometimes it's labeled chime, and we use that chime going through 10,000 feet when we're climbing, and then we also use that when we're going back down, descending through 10,000 feet, to give them approximately 10 minutes notice before landing. But it's the seatbelt sign. The only thing we use that for is just to let them know that it's okay to get out of your seat.
Well, you flick it on and off. You do it so fast that the light actually doesn't really change.
Yeah.
But it gives a double chime.
Right. But I mean, does the actual light actually flash?
Well, it would do if you're watching it, but only for the time it takes to go flick flick. That's less than half a second.
I need to get a fake news sound effect. Because we're getting a lot of fake news lately.
Exactly right. So now, because it happens on almost every airline. Now we do it for different airlines because different reasons. Because every airline has its own standard operating procedures. So obviously ours and yours differ. You do at different heights and for different points.
Mm-hmm.
But I can just imagine that if any poor passenger reading this. Every airline they fly on there, she's going to think they're about to die.
Oh gosh, we're about to die. 30 seconds. We have 30 seconds.
Well, you and I laugh, but I mean, they would be terrified. I think this is so irresponsible.
This article goes on. It's not the only terrifying code that could reveal something sinister on board. Pilots have a secret way of warning a hijacking is taking place.
What?
A distress code of 7500 is sent through an electronic device called a transponder to signal any unlawful interference. Called squawking, it's a silent signal to avoid alerting the hijacker. Great. Well, now they've just blown it.
Knows.
Now everybody knows. What are we going to do now? We're going to have to think of something else.
Think of a new number.
Okay. Fake news. Thank you, Thomas. Sorry you had to read that. And no,
where did this come from?
That is a good question. Express.co.uk.
Express.
We're
not impressed in Express.
No. Hey, Nick, Rob is sucking up to you, I think, for some reason. He says, "Hi, Nick. In November, my wife and I will be traveling from Oz to the U.S. We will be flying Acme Red Atlantic, only ever having flown Acme domestic and loving the service." See, he's sucking up. My question is,
I see that.
Do you know the best way of getting an upgrade? I've asked when checking in with Singapore Airlines, but never had any luck when we were fly to the UK. I'm hoping
fly with British Airways. That's the best way of getting an upgrade.
I'm hoping that Acme Red will be different, but the procedure to gaining the elusive ticket remains a mystery. So all you have to do is say, hey, I know Captain Nick.
Exactly right. Yeah,
You'll get a free upgrade.
No, I know a guaranteed way to get an upgrade.
Pay extra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll do
Yeah.
it.
You fork out about like £6,000 if you want an upper class seat, and about, I don't know, £3,000, £2,000 if you want a premium economy.
It's only money,
Exactly.
Rob. Come on,
I mean,
you can't
to
take
be
it with
fair, we upgrades are possible, and they usually occur when the economy cabin is full, and there's still lots of space in the premium and upper cabins. Now, the way to, in theory, to get one, and I only offer this as a faint possibility, is to first of all pitch up well dressed. Then make sure you're there at the back of the queue, so that all the economy seats will have people will have checked in and got their seats, and the economy cabin might be full. And then when you pitch up, they might look and go, well, everyone's checked in for economy. We're a bit overbooked, so perhaps we might upgrade the last few passengers. And if you're well enough dressed and you're pleasant enough, and you don't ask for it, because the last thing you want to do is actually ask for it, because then you're not likely to get it, because people go, well, if you ask for it, I'm not going to give it to you. Then you might get upgraded. So
that's a good idea.
That's the only thought is so don't pitch up too late, because you won't get on the damn flight. So it requires subtle timing to make sure that you're sort of at the back of the queue. You're still on time, but all the economy seats might by now have been filled. And then they go, well, the only place we could now possibly seat you is in a premium or upper.
It requires finesse.
Exactly right. And I do not guarantee it, and I do not recommend it either.
Okay. Also, in your last podcast, you talked about Crocs, and it came across that they are everywhere. I had a friend ring me from the UK saying, is this true?
Yes.
The Crocs are only in the north from Townsville on the east coast up and Broome on the west coast. Okay. That's pretty much everywhere.
Well, it's the kind of northern half. That's when we
Yeah.
kind of flew armed. Yeah, that'd be about right.
Well, Rob is, again, making our accuracy rating go down. Thank you, Rob.
We were pretty good.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah,
Jeff,
I think we're about right.
also, in the last podcast, you talked about pronouncing words correctly, how it bugs you that people don't do this, and it's your pet hate. I said, hate is a very strong word, more like a pet peeve. Anyway, well, as I've written in before, turbine is not pronounced turbine. Only kidding. We know how you septic tanks stuff up English. Wow. He called us septic tanks.
No, he called you septic tanks.
Oh,
Jeff.
okay.
I am English.
Wow. Rob, where's the love?
Yeah, I know.
Where is the love?
Poor Jeff.
Gosh. Come on,
Nick, he says, pull them
in
into
a
line. Yeah, well, I do my best, old chap. But, there's only a certain amount you can do. The show only lasts 3 hours. I mean,
it's a lost
if I had
cause.
it for like 20 hours a day, I could perhaps do something. But
maybe. Probably not. Maybe. He says, love the show. Come back, crickets. We miss you. Yeah, we know how you feel.
Yeah.
And finally, our last bit of feedback in the feedback folder. Good afternoon, ladies and gents. I've started listening to your super show courtesy of Captain Nick. He and I work at the same company, Acme Red, and I overheard him talking about the show some time ago and have tuned in ever since. My question is mainly based towards Jeff and Nick. Oh, how appropriate. As two well-experienced captains, in other words, old guys, how do you judge your first officer's ability or experience? Not well.
Well, that's
no, just kidding. He says, I asked this question as I will be 28 years old next month, and I was lucky in my youth to be offered a cadetship with a well-known Middle Eastern airline, started at the ripe old age of 19. Wow, that's young. Wow. Can making assumptions of one's ability based upon their age also hamper communication later in the day or trip even? What are your thoughts on this? Happy flying as always, Mike. And I basically wrote that back to Mike saying, we're not going to answer this because we don't reply to questions from youngsters.
Yeah, that's right, from children. Well, the best thing is
really
to leave
didn't do
it
that.
happy at home, old chap.
So what? I mean, have you flown with really really young guys? Probably not too often at your
Not
your
for
outfit.
many years, quite.
Yeah.
For heaven's sake. I mean, most of the guys in our company have been with 1, 2, perhaps even 3 airlines. The guy I flew with today has been at the company 6 months, but he has did like 20 years in the Air Force.
Okay, so not new guys then. How about young guys?
Well, no, not really. There are very few young guys.
Okay.
I mean, I'm talking about in their early 20s.
Right.
So if I saw one, I'd be going, whoa, whoa, heaven's sake, where have you come from?
If you've been watching that series on BBC, the EasyJet.
Oh yes, if I saw one of those on my flight back,
those guys are like, well, you know what? And I've actually
no, don't touch the controls.
I've flown with a couple of guys that like look that young, and it takes you aback at first. And you go, wow, does this guy even shave yet?
Exactly, yes.
But I really don't try to prejudge anybody's abilities based on how young they look. And actually, it turns out that some of the guys that I've flown with lately that were very, very young looking were very, very good pilots. So, you can't judge a book by its cover, I guess they say. So.
Yeah, you're quite right, Jeff. I'm only joking. Yeah, you're quite right. I've flown with guys of all sorts of ages, all sorts of experience. Some of the trainers that now do my simulators are considerably younger than I am, but they're obviously very good at the job, and they do. They're very professional, and it's all good. And I still think of myself as a young man, which is kind of silly, but there you go. So when I see a young first officer, I look at him and I think, well, he's about the same age as me.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to work and walking into the pilot lounge still feeling like I'm a new hire.
Yeah.
Until recently, like the last couple of years, and then I'm thinking to myself, I catch glimpses of myself going by the mirror, and my beer belly and my gray hair, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I'm not a new hire.
Who's that man in that window?
And then that guy, those guys looking at me like, come on, old fart. It's time to retire. Get out of our way. You're hampering our career.
Yeah, exactly right. You're sitting in my seat.
Yeah, get on my seat.
Yeah,
old bird.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think we can all. Everyone that comes to work for our airlines is going to be well trained. They're going to hold a license, and to me, that is the piece of paper that qualifies you to sit in that seat and do the job.
Yep.
It's not for me to judge you, because if you hold the license, you should be able to do the job.
Yep.
And if you can't, then there's some problem there. So very rarely do I ever see a first officer who doesn't look like he's just the man for the job. And they're all brilliant. So even the young ones. So it's great.
Fantastic.
Jeff, is that the goodbye music?
It is.
I've never heard that before.
So that's the music that you hear when you're listening to the audio only podcast. And
wow.
This is the very first time that we've actually done this live, and I did not do that on purpose. And I thought the same thing. I'm thinking,
this sounds like a podcast.
The end of the show music is coming on.
Yeah.
So this is a good time. Thank goodness it's appropriate timing, because that was our last piece of feedback. So now it's time to talk about how you can learn more about the show by heading over to the airlinepilotguy.com website. There you'll find information about the show, the crew, the community, the coffee fund, merchandise, and so much more. And soon, the special Plain Tales feed as well. So get on over there. And social media, you want to say something about that, Captain Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. We're on Facebook, which is the Facebook usual Facebook code, facebook.com/airline pilot guy. We're on Twitter, and we go under the handle at APG Crew. And of course, we also have that fantastic app that you can download from iTunes or an Android equivalent that will give you access to all sorts of stuff, including the shows and all other bits and bobs to do with us.
And the timing didn't work out well.
Oh, no.
That's okay. I can fix this. Actually,
there's somebody just flown over New York. What's going over?
This is actually not being recorded. These 3 tracks that are about to play are.
Are we the only people hearing that?
No, well, the people watching the YouTube video will hear this, but the people listening to the audio only show will it'll all be properly placed, and it'll sound like we just did this perfectly.
Oh, of course we did it perfectly.
Of course we did.
We're true professionals.
And so, did you say anything about Slack at all?
No, I didn't. I think we're waiting for Hillel to jump out of the jack-in-the-box.
Can you help us out?
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. On Slack, we share news and ideas. We suggest episode and plain tales topics. We plan meetups and events. To get into the Slack team, please send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @HI11E1, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel @HI11E1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks, Hillel!
All right.
He does a good job, doesn't he? Because
He does.
he must get a lot of requests all the time.
He does. And let's see what else. We talked about social media, the website, the apps, and that's about all I can think of. So without further ado, I think it's time for us to say, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye, everybody.
And happy birthday, Nick.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, now what they would hear.
These those sirens going on out the window.
And let's see if I can do this right. So we'll pretend I'm going to take this off mute.
Views and opinions
expressed
on the Airline Pilot
Stop.
Guide podcast may not represent the view.
HBTY. Oh. What is that? An airplane.
Can you hear that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Good day.
That's very good.
I used to be such a
Good pilot.
till I started APG. I opened doors.
No, I'm not a good pilot.
No, I know. Why does APG make you a bad pilot?
Pilot guy. Because Miami Hick's a hateful guy. Mad dog.
That's Matt.
I got no friends cause I'm always flying. I just don't have the time. But I can land this old plane. I can land it just fine.
Airline pilot guy.
I fly a mad dog. Airline pilot guy. He can land it heavy far. Airline pilot guy. I fly a mad dog. Airline pilot guy. He can land it heavy far.
Very good. It ain't Boeing, I ain't going. Oh, who said that?
Statements, views, and opinions expressed on the airline.
Who said that? I never
You
said
did.
that.
May not
No, I
represent
didn't.
the views, opinions, or policies of any airline,
Fake
be it
news.
real or fictionalized, mentioned, implied.
Yeah, it might be.
slip.
That was taken out of context, young man, and you know it.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was complaining for those listeners who don't. I was complaining about those people who say things like, "If it ain't Boeing, I ain't going," which is why I've been driven to be such a pro Airbus man. There you go.
Anyway, well, that was interesting. So now, because I'm recording in 3 tracks, that all that stuff, that music that started coming from out of nowhere, was not actually recorded. So I can just, as I said, put it in where it's supposed to be.
You're recording in 3D.
Yeah.
I'm impressed.
Well, it is impressive. All right. Well, Nick, you must be tuckered out. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning your time.
I haven't even tried to work it out.
Yeah, it's 9 o'clock here. So
no, I'm starting to feel just a wee bit. Well, hang on a minute. It's 9 here.
Yeah.
And we're 5 hours difference, so it's 2 a.m.
Yep.
I've been through 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 beers.
Nice.
So
that should do it.
I've got one more to go.
So tomorrow, what time do you have to? Are you leaving tomorrow, or is that?
Yeah. We check out about I think it's about 3 in the afternoon ish, sometime around there. So I should have time to go to B&H.
All right, good.
Pick up a nice boom arm for my new microphone.
Nice.
With
something.
What is that 3-pin plug we have? XLR. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
An XLR cable, because the one I've got at home has got a built-in USB cable, so I have to wrap the XLR cable around. It doesn't work. So I'm going to get one of those, and it's going to be 21 degrees in New York tomorrow and sunny. So
nice.
I might just wander down Bryant Park and have a coffee with the homeless people.
Sounds like a nice day.
Yeah, I enjoy chatting to them.
Excellent.
But no, apart from that, no, it's going to be a quiet day, and then overnight flight home, and then I've only got one night before I'm back here again.
Really?
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I know. I shortened it by a day so that I could. I had a flight which. Where did it go? I didn't want to go there. And I swapped it. Oh, it was in Lagos. I had Lagos, and so I threw it open to people to grab. And a chap who likes late flights grabbed it off me and offered me a New York. So I accepted that. Yeah, it's very nice. So I'm coming back here. It's the VS-25, which is not an ideal flight. It's very late landing, so we get in here at about 1 a.m. or midnight, which is like 5 a.m. UK time. So it's pretty tiring for us. But then we got to come the whole day and the next, 2 nights effectively.
Oh, nice.
So that's quite a nice flight, a nice break.
Excellent.
And then after that, it's time off and a holiday in Italy.
Oh, that's right. So are you going to be available on Thursday of next week?
Good question.
Okay.
Let me pull up the diary.
Don't worry about it. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
I think you need to just go to bed.
Thursday.
I
I will be in New York. It'll be in the middle of my New York trip, so I should be.
Oh.
I'm not quite sure where the hotel is, but last time it worked well from Grandma's house.
It did.
Even if I'm there, it may be okay.
Okay.
So, yes, Thursday next week would be fine.
Perfect.
No problem.
Good. Hopefully Steph will be available Thursday afternoon.
And Dana?
Dana, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think he should be as well. I think he's on vacation this week.
Wow.
So
all of us.
Hopefully we'll all be here for a show on Thursday. I'll be somewhere on a trip, but I'll bring all the gear.
That sounds great. And
Little Rock, I think I'll be on Thursday.
Is there a Little Rock at Little Rock?
A bunch of them. When I was out walking, I saw several.
Really?
Yeah, but I'm not sure exactly how they got that name. It is on the Arkansas River, so maybe there's a rock somewhere in the middle of the river they call Little Rock. I'm not sure exactly how they got the. I'll have to look that up, and on the next show we'll talk about how Little Rock got the name.
Well, actually, Little Rock's not quite so exciting as Crazy Woman. I want to know how Crazy Woman got its
Yeah,
name.
me too. I'm not sure exactly. That's in Wyoming, I think.
Yeah, well, that's Canada, yeah.
Native American crazy. They're all crazy women.
Yeah, and Medicine Hat. I want to know how Medicine Hat got its name.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sure somebody out there knows.
Well, please, if you're out there, so I fly over all these places, and they're 3-letter identifiers, and then you actually look at them. There's a place called Mustang, and I'm going, well, all right, is that the car or horses? And then you get Crazy Women and Riviere de Loup. I guess that one. That's not a problem. But a lot of other places, I'm going, how did these places get there? Who was there? Why and how?
Idea.
I'd love to know more about that.
That's
It's just fascinating.
That is fascinating. I do the same thing. Look at these names and thinking, huh? How'd that get? How'd they come up with that? Gary Loves Beer says, when will Miami Rick be on the show again? That's a good question.
Good question.
Yeah.
Why don't you ask him?
Yeah. Let us know what he says.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, thanks for hanging with us in the chat room. We appreciate it. And
as
it was
always.
Short notice, as always. We do apologize for that. We do love you very much. And, sir, it was a pleasure spending the evening of your birth anniversary with you. And I'll see.
Jeff, that's about the most convoluted way.
Yeah, your birthday.
birthday.
Trying to be sophisticated about it.
Oh, I love it. That's great.
Anyway, so I'm going to hit the little button here that says stop broadcast.
No, don't. I'm enjoying myself way too much.
I know, but I have to do some final packing and maybe eat something.
Of course,
and go
you've
to bed.
got a green slip. I can just see the dollar signs revolving behind your eyelids.
Hey, man, I have expenses. Lots of expenses. These kids are killing me. Anyway, I gotta do what I gotta do.
Thanks very much, Jen. I'm waiting to receive my birthday kisses. I haven't had any birthday kisses yet.
Wow, that would be nice.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. And I'm sorry I wasn't here with my high quality Heil
gosh no
microphone, but I'm so proud of it, sitting at home, and it's there, and it's all beautiful, and I've got a little pop filter and everything. I just didn't want to take the risk of main man Micah says he's not kissing me.
Good.
Yes,
good to
that
hear,
is good. We might get our beards interlocked like Velcro, Micah, and then we'd never be able to get apart again. That would not be a
Lane,
good thing.
that is so inappropriate. Of course, what Nick did was very inappropriate as well.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, all I see from Lane is APGXXX, kiss, kiss, kiss. Is that a
okay.
feeling of love?
You must have a different font. What I see is different letters.
I've got a clean mind.
Yeah, you got a clean mind.
How'd you know that?
Uh-huh. All right, I really do need to go. Sorry, everybody.
All right.
Sorry to be a pooper, but I know it's early, but I got things to do.
People to see, things to do. All right, Jeff.
That's right.
Bye-bye, everybody.
I mean, I could leave this on if you want.
No, I'm dying here.
Okay.
I'm keeping it going. I'm doing my best.
Okay. Yeah. Well, get a good night's sleep. Enjoy the park with the homeless. And,
thank you very much. Yes.
See everybody next time.
Yeah. Next Thursday, by the sense of it.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
Bye.
All the best, everybody. Good night.